spiral.
Yes.
Politicisation, yes. Well, I think it's quite clear that there is an element of politicisation. Certainly the far left are publicising in all of their ways possible, using the social media to try and assert that they have their rights, and why should these companies be paying out dividends to their shareholders. But of course, they always say that because they don't understand that actually you need to make profits in order to invest in the future.
Well, we'll leave it there for the moment, and let's hope that your prediction is right. It's not going to be quite as bad as everybody first thought. Nicholas Finney, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. It's 6:10. Should we bring you up to date with what else is going on today? Well, Liz Truss says there's too much talk that there's going to be a recession. In an interview with The Sun on Sunday, the Foreign Secretary is insisting that an economic slump is not inevitable, despite warnings from the Bank of England.
Scotland Yard is now being investigated by the police watchdog after it emerged officers came into contact with the student nurse Owami Davis after she had been reported missing. Now, the Met says they were called to an address in Croydon on July the 6th due to concerns over a woman's welfare, but she told them she didn't want help. They then left. The interaction occurred before Essex police handed the missing person case to the Met on July the 23rd.
Barristers are voting on plans for an all-out strike next month as part of a row with the government over jobs and pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association have been walking out on alternate weeks, but are now being balloted on an indefinite, uninterrupted strike that would start on September the 5th. The ballot closes at midnight today, with the result expected on Monday.
Is anyone not striking at the moment?
Well, we're here.
Yes.
At the moment.
As is Aiden.
Yeah.
I'm here.
You're here.
I wouldn't dream of striking.
The big fight, or was it the big sort of kerfuffle afterwards? It seems that that's got as many headlines as the reaction from Andrew Joshua after he lost on a split decision.
Yeah, look, it was...
And I don't even know what a split decision is, so can you explain for those...
Yeah, sure. So three judges will determine who wins the rounds. Points are scored by this area around here where you hit the body. It's the perimeter of the face,
and if it
down
hits
the shoulders.
The glove, it doesn't count.
The glove's fine, but Joshua hit below the belt a couple of times last night, which I've not seen in boxing for quite a while, actually, I must admit. But it's this area here, that's how you score your points. And so somebody on the sideline, it's not really done electronically, I don't think, but it's more on the eye. They score it by the number of times you make a connection with that frame that I've just outlined. Now, what was controversial is that you have three judges. Anybody watching that fight last night would have scored it unanimously, i.e., all three judges, there would have been an expectation on them to all call it in Usyk's favour. It was very much a shock when Glenn Feldman announced his result, or it was announced that his scorecard had Joshua winning the fight. It's astonishing. 100.
Does he have to justify that?
No, this is controversial. It's a really good point, that, actually, because Barry McGuigan was on Twitter last night saying it's about time they did. It's about time they did have to justify it. In football, for example, there have been calls for referees to give interviews afterwards to say, look, why did you just give that decision there? You've got VAR helping you out. You had your positioning was poor, or it might have been good, whatever.
Oh, we can see Usyk really hit home with his shots. I mean, he obviously had that victory last time round and regarded as a really, really good boxer.
Terrific.
Joshua had recognised before this fight.
He changed his fight.
Did that explain the reaction after the fight?
Possibly. I mean, I think when you've been...
Well, you have to tell us exactly what happened.
Yeah, look, he was schooled in the first fight at Tottenham back last September. He looked much more trim last night. He looked much more up for it. His tactical approach was much more sophisticated. He did everything I think he could have been expected to do to try and win this fight. Sometimes, though, Anne, you just hit someone who's better than you, in a better class than you. He's not even a natural heavyweight, Alexander Usyk. He's had to step up from cruiserweight to heavyweight, so he's not even fighting his natural weight, but he looks so good. He could beat Tyson Fury, I'm certain of that.
So the fight went the whole distance?
Yes, it did go the whole distance. Joshua didn't look it. He looked in trouble from time to time. He didn't look like being knocked out. And Joshua was very good himself. I mean, he did as much as he could pinning Usyk in, but the problem with his speed and his dexterity, his movement, the speed of his hands, even when he's reclining, even when he's on the defensive, he'll get three shots in, and that's more points.
This is what Joshua was saying. Look, I'm 18 stone. I can't move around that quickly.
Yeah, it's skill. He said. I think he wants to educate boxing fans. I think, look, just because I'm bigger than him doesn't mean I'm going to beat him. That's not what boxing is about.
But sorry, just to go on, just for people who weren't watching it, because I wasn't, obviously. But so the fight goes the full distance.
It did go the full distance,
and then it gets called by the
yes, the judges. Yes, there's three judges, and it was just a bit of a surprise. Dan, the first of those judges, Glenn Feldman, called it in Joshua's favour. Nobody would have seen that. It was a real shock. It didn't matter too much. The other two called it in Usyk's favour, and even when Joshua heard the first verdict, he wouldn't have been expecting the other two. That's a hell of a little luck to get one call.
Then what happened?
So then what happened? Joshua just kind of loses it a little bit. That's the moment for the champion. That's the moment for Usyk to have his speech. He's had a
flag.
He was fighting in the war a few months ago. You know, lots happened since the last fight, even though it was less than a year ago. And then Joshua just takes the microphone, and there's quite a lot of expletives there. He wasn't being abusive to anybody, but first of all he stormed out of the ring. And then everyone's wondering what the kerfuffle is about. Maybe someone said something to him, but it didn't feel like that. And then he came back in, he took the belts and dropped them outside the ring, which is disrespectful because that's
like throwing your toys out of the pram.
Well, it is. It's basically denigrating the prizes that he's fought for, you know, which seems a really silly thing to do. And then he makes this speech. Now, it's complimentary towards Usyk. He said, "Look, you know, this is a phenomenal fighter." But I think it was a clamour for respect in some ways. He said, "Look, I'm not like Fury. I'm not like Usyk. I wasn't fighting from the age of 5 years old. This isn't in my blood. I was a young offender. I was 18 and I changed my stars. I was in and out of young offenders institutes, and I've got this far on being overweight when I was a certain age, and I need some more respect." That's what he was saying.
Was there a suggestion from his camp that he may have actually been concussed, that he took so many hits to the head that perhaps he literally wasn't thinking?
It wasn't really from his camp. I think the camp may say something later today, but I think, to me, I mean, look, he's gone the distance with one of the best fighters in the world, possibly one of the best ever. I think it's very possible that he could have been concussed. Some of his friends afterwards who were in the studio doing the coverage were saying, "I'd have gone in there. Where were his team? His team should have gone in there, even if it means taking a knock. You would have to pull him out of there because he ruined Usyk's moment."
Yeah.
They're still friends, those two. That's not an issue.
Because he actually spoke before Usyk, and normally the winner would speak.
Sometimes the loser doesn't speak at all, you know. And maybe he was thinking, well, is this my last hurrah in the ring? Is this the last time I'm going to be here? Is this my last time to grab respect before I go into the commentary box? Personally, I think he did himself justice last night. I think he really went for it. He did as much as he could. I think there's other fights out there for him.
Well, I was going to ask, if he's done as much as he can, is he going to be thinking this morning, is that it? I've tried and I've come up against someone who's better than me, and obviously it's Tyson Fury always in the background for both fighters, but will he be thinking, that's it, I'm not at the top? I'm
not so sure. I think that maybe give it a few months before while he has a rest and he recalibrates and everything. It may be that, I mean, there's still fights out there for him. I mean, Deontay Wilder's another one who's smarting because he's been schooled by Tyson Fury, 3 times effectively in the last 3 years. So there's that fight as well. Wilder's knocked out everybody he's fought apart from Tyson Fury. And I think commercially, Tyson Fury's fight with Joshua, which hasn't happened obviously yet, but I think commercially it would be irresistible for promoters not to put on.
Well, I was just going to say that. I mean, it makes him a more colourful character, this sort of controversy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
He's still worth talking about.
Well, it's interesting last night. Someone said it's good to see. I've followed Joshua's career from early on. I knew him quite well in the early years of his career. He actually rang me looking for property advice at one time back in 2015, investing, because he said, "Look, Aiden, I'm only ever one in this game. You only ever one punch from being sparked out, and possibly even worse, brain damage or death. You know, that can happen in boxing. It's real,
Ali,
without doubt." And so he's come along a lot further than he's expected. He's come a long way since ringing me up. That's for sure.
And it was 33 million?
33 million last night. Yeah, but
that's a lot of terraced houses, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. So what
to lose? Actually, how much does the winner get?
It doesn't always work that the winner gets the biggest share of the prize because he might not be as commercially viable. I don't know what the figure was last. I don't know what the purse was last night. I can find out later on.
Promoters.
Yeah. I mean, if the best fighter might not be the commercial draw. It's a bit like, say, if Federer goes up against Djokovic in the final. Well, Federer might not have won as many slams in the last 10 years, but people still want to see him play more than they want to see Djokovic play. But someone's made a point last night and said, and this goes back to what I was saying a few moments ago, when his career was stage managed by Sky. And it was stage managed by Matchroom, his promotion. Some people said to me last night, "Is that the real Joshua we saw last night?" Someone who just said, "Look, I've had enough of this. I want to say what I want to say." A bit like Ivan Drago in Rocky V, you know, when he got rid of all the people around him and said, "I fight for me, not for the Kremlin." Not the same, but you know what I'm saying.
But that sort of moment.
Yeah,
interesting.
But it was a great tear-up, good fight, and good for the sport as well. And yes, we got a bit of drama at the end. Spencer Oliver yesterday, he's going to be on with us later on. He promised fireworks.
He promised fireworks.
And he wasn't wrong.
This is true.
He wasn't wrong.
But they're not quite the sort of fireworks I think he was expecting.
No, possibly. We'll get his view on it anyway. He's still over there, so we could hear from him.
OK, right. Well, there's plenty more to come on the programme, as you can imagine, this morning, including we're going to be looking at if you are feeling burnout at work. Are you a bit of a snowflake?
Yes, and we've been talking about early autumn, perhaps, with the leaves already falling, particularly the horse chestnut trees you were spotting.
Yeah, so let's tell you what the weather has in store. So looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, although there will be some rain showers around. Let's take a look at the detail. After a bright morning, skies will turn increasingly cloudy across the southwest this lunchtime. There'll be some patchy rain around, especially across Cornwall. Feeling humid, though, despite the cloud.
Well, apart from the odd shower, much of southeastern England will be dry again as we move into lunchtime. Some spells of sunshine then breaking out.
Wales, on the other hand, will be rather cloudy and grey with some outbreaks of rain, especially in the south of the country.
And on to the Midlands, the top of the Midlands there, seeing some rain showers throughout the afternoon, but then much of the south of the Midlands dry. Also some spells of sunshine breaking out. Temperatures around 21 Celsius there later.
And the best of the sunshine this lunchtime will be across northern England, although the odd light shower can't be ruled out across the Pennines. It will feel pleasant in the sunshine, with temperatures approaching the 20s.
Winds lighter across Scotland yesterday, and a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers there, especially in the north and the west.
And it'll also be a better day for Northern Ireland, with much of the country dry with some spells of sunshine, just the odd shower along the north coast.
Into this evening, cloud and rain for the southwest, spreading northeastwards, but much of the north remaining dry, and that's how the weather's going to shape up for the rest of this Sunday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. A very good morning if you've just joined us. It's 6:23, nearly 6:24 this Sunday morning. And I'm afraid you can't get over it. Even on a Sunday morning, the main headline is about strikes, isn't it? I mean, even barristers going on strike.
Yeah.
And today the Port of Felixstowe starts an 8-day strike.
Who knows?
Yeah, well, can't do that, can we? Autumn is coming. We were talking about the fact that if you look out at the moment, The streets, the parkland, the grass is covered with dead leaves. Exactly. It's on the front pages of some of the
marshes there.
Yeah, outside my window, dead leaves all over the pavement.
They're calling it a false autumn.
Yeah, the trees are going into shock. What with the very hot weather and now a drought. There you are, the front page of The Observer. I mean, it looks beautiful, but that picture belongs in sort of late September,
October, yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't it? And we are sort of getting an early autumn. Julie has just got in touch. Hi there, Julie, one of our GB viewers. Autumn is coming. I've been picking up dead leaves, she says, for many weeks now.
Yeah, other thoughts too. We mentioned the pets and the problems after they were all... obviously picked up during the
it's
lockdown.
Pandemic pets,
Pandemic pets, yeah. Anthony has sent us a picture of his 3 dogs. I just want to mention how much I love my 3 dogs. Better than any child. Ouch. Exclamation mark. Robbie 8, Bailey 13, knocking on a bit, and Keita 10. All collies, my babies.
Yeah. But I mean, apparently, according to Battersea Cats and Dogs Home, a lot of people who bought themselves animal companions for the lockdown, basically, and it was very important in the lockdown, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Are finding now that not only, I suppose, are they in many cases expected to go back to work and maybe can't look after their pet at home anymore, but particularly because of the rising cost of living, they simply can't afford
and vets fees. I don't know if you've taken your dog or pet to the vet recently. Astronomical, and even pet insurance has gone up.
Pet insurance has, yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is quite something now, taking on a dog or a cat, because once upon a time you weren't expected to have them insured, were you?
No.
It is now the thing. You have to, really, I suppose.
Exactly.
And it is an extra expense, and some people just can't face that expense. Would you consider giving up your pet if things got too tough? Apparently, according to the people at Battersea, that's exactly what they're facing. More and more dogs and cats homes are now seeing an influx of unwanted or pets that they just can't afford to keep anymore, which is sad and a sign of the times. Or is it? I don't know. Anyway, thanks very much. Do get in touch, won't you, on that one and any other. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, closing your laptop at 5 p.m. exactly, doing only your assigned tasks, spending more time with your family.
Or in the garden.
All those leaves to clear up.
Yeah.
These are just some of the common examples being used to define the latest workplace trend, apparently, of quiet quitting, whatever that is.
Well, we'll find out, because quiet quitting doesn't actually involve quitting. Instead, it's been deemed a response to hustle culture and burnout. Employees are quitting, going above and beyond what they would normally do, and then declining to do tasks that they're not actually being paid for. So what you're talking about is people out in the office who just don't want to be there anymore.
Am I bothered?
Yeah, it is a bit like that.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean they really are suffering from burnout and their problems need to be addressed? Or does it mean they're being a bit snowflakey?
James Townsend has actually bothered to turn up and speak to us, an employment partner. Thank you very much indeed for being with us this morning. Is this something that has cropped up with the, and I hate these terms, but people use it, the snowflakes and the millennials?
Well, good morning. I think what we need to do is take a step back for a moment and just remember what things were like during the pandemic. A lot of employers actually didn't behave particularly well at that point in time, and they were quite quick to cut wages. They were actually quite quick to cut jobs, and we saw the furlough scheme coming in and all of that, but a lot of people did lose their jobs. So as we then started to emerge from furlough and the pandemic, and as employees started to embrace agile working, a lot of those good employees with long memories in fact started to think, well, there might be something better for me. And this led to that term, which we're all now familiar with, of the Great Resignation. So a lot of staff were lost, moved on, improved their pay and everything else. And then you were left with others who perhaps were suffering a bit of burnout, perhaps felt they hadn't been treated so well. And so this concept from over the pond was sort of introduced with this idea of quiet quitting. Now, there's nothing unlawful or illegal about quiet quitting. It simply means, closing your laptop, as you said, at 5 o'clock in the evening, not going above and beyond. But you're not going to really feel that sense of fulfillment at work through quiet quitting. And you could end up becoming a little bit depressed if you're not getting fulfillment out of your job. So those that have been left behind and started to subscribe to this policy of quiet quitting, well, they're not going to be getting pay rises, they're not going to be getting bonuses, and we're now talking about cost of living, we're talking about moving into another recession, and those are the employees that are likely to find themselves cut, perhaps at the earliest opportunity. I mean, if you look at redundancy programs, employers don't keep their quiet quitters, they keep their best performers. So I don't think it's a particularly sensible policy for an employee to be embracing at work.
Didn't we used to call it working to rule?
Yeah, working to rule. I mean, on the news today, we've talked about strikes, haven't we? We have that. But, I mean, people, I suppose, are striking at the moment to perhaps save jobs. You know, they're saying, look, the government are looking to cut 4,000 of us. We've got to go out on strike to save jobs. But this idea of quietly sitting in the background and not really going above and beyond, employers are going to notice that. If you're an employee and you're new to the job and you're not performing, you're going to be subject to a performance review period. And during your probationary period, you're going to potentially lose your job on not very much notice. The workplace is going to become more and more competitive over, the coming months and over the next year. And, if you work to rule, well, it might be good in the short term, but you might find yourself out of a job. And I think what's really important to look at as well, in most contracts of employment, your duties aren't set out specifically. There's normally a clause there that says you have to do such other roles and responsibilities as your employer might ask you to do, during the course of your working time. And also quite often people aren't necessarily, set on set numbers of hours. It might say your normal hours are 37.5 hours per week, but you might have to do those extra hours if required.
And James, you mentioned about the legacy of lockdown, and clearly that's hit the airline industry and the airports particularly, where they just got rid of all their staff and tried to get them back, and they said on your bike. But what does the working from home aspect of this do as well, where clearly you've got a bit more freedom, a bit more flexibility if you're doing that, and if you want to put your laptop down at 5 to 5, you can do that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that came out of the pandemic was that work has definitely changed. Those people who were office-based workers were finding actually that they could work very successfully from home. They didn't have to spend time on the commute. I don't know necessarily that this concept of quiet quitting plays into this concept of agile working. You can get a lot done productively from home, but there will of course be people that take advantage. Now, if you're one of those people that's taking advantage, if your boss tries to get through to you at 5:10 on a Friday afternoon and you don't answer that Teams call, your boss isn't going to be impressed. And as I say, when the cuts come, you're the one that's likely to be in line for potentially losing your job. When the time comes for deciding who gets what bonus, and bonuses tend to be discretionary, as do pay reviews, you're not going to do particularly well.
No, and it's a bit selfish as well, isn't it? I think you're making life miserable for the others around you.
I guess if it affects all your work colleagues around you, that they've got to pick up and sort of carry the weight off your shoulders, that's, as you say, selfish.
Yeah. We all go to work to be fulfilled, don't we? We go to work to enjoy ourselves, to have fun, to work with colleagues. Your colleagues aren't going to think very much of you if you're a quiet quitter and you're not playing your bit and you're not being a team player. And so it's a very American concept. It's a concept that's been brought across here. People are talking about it, but this is not the right time for quiet quitting, I don't think.
Let it be one that we don't adopt. Thanks very much indeed. We've got to quietly quit you now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for being with us. Yeah.
Much more to come, including all the news and views from this morning's papers. Don't forget. And we will be joined by a GP to find out more about how thunder fever may affect you and your loved ones. Yes, thunder fever. Stay with us.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. The time is 6:35 already this Sunday morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark. Should we take a look at today's front pages?
Yes, Sunday papers. Observer, reporting on concerns of some senior Tory members believing that any failure of Liz Truss to address the cost of living crisis could lead to a substantial loss of party members, let alone, of course, maybe losing the government. The picture there showing the amount of leaves that have fallen on the ground today, I think this is in Tottenham. And clearly it's happening across the country.
Looks like autumn already, and yet it's August. The Sunday Mirror leads with the headline, Wastminster. It reports that more than 1,000 tonnes of subsidised food has been discarded at the Palace of Westminster. Slightly unfair, showing Boris Johnson there tucking into something. I bet he doesn't waste his food.
No, nothing wasted there. Sunday Telegraph reporting that Liz Truss, meanwhile, has vowed, as he said, to halt NHS doctor exodus as the healthcare crisis continues. Pensions actually part of that problem with the doctors.
And the front page of the Sunday Times reports that university bosses are arguing for a higher tuition fee. Difficulties, they say UK students a year for a degree. A year. Currently, of course, the annual tuition fee is £9,250, but they're saying, the universities are saying, they need you to pay much more like what they charge foreign students.
And then charge you 6.6 interest.
Yeah, and move that goalpost of interest as and when they want. Oh, horrendous. Time to go through these papers now. Joining us this morning, Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked, and Emma Burnell, playwright and journalist. And good morning to both of you.
Yes.
Good morning.
So, where are we starting, Fraser, with the crisis in the NHS, covered by the Telegraph?
The ongoing crisis in the NHS. One of the many big problems facing the NHS at the moment is that doctors are retiring early. And it's estimated that around 7 in 10 doctors are essentially pushed into retirement by the way their pension works. So there's a kind of cap on their pensions. When it gets to over £1 million, after that they get punished essentially for taking on more work.
55% tax.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so you
lifetime
can
allowance.
So the incentive then is for doctors to take early retirement, which is that might be nice for them, but also when
it's a crazy matter.
It's kind of a crazy incentive.
Scheme,
it's a crazy
If she
scheme.
removes it though for the doctors, surely she's got to do it for everyone else. You can't make doctors a special case, can you?
No, you're right, and this is obviously it all sounds like a nice solution, but then when you're talking about people's pensions, maybe some people do like to retire early, of course. I think people will pick up a bit of a fuss.
But Liz Truss is saying that one of the ways to solve the NHS problems at the moment, particularly the backlog after the pandemic, is to encourage older doctors back into the service. You can't if you're going to penalise them at the same time.
Exactly, and one of the other things that they've identified is the fact that there is a lot of kind of red tape in getting older doctors back into the service, as well as this pension problem. They have to do a lot of extra training, a lot of it really not really related to healthcare. So one of the things you have to show is that you've done your prevent de-radicalisation training. I don't know whether that's really necessary for doctors.
But here's another issue that the Telegraph has touched on with this, and that is that senior consultants and the highest earners automatically pay 14.5% of their earnings into their pension pot. So clearly they're going to hit that lifetime allowance pretty damn quickly.
Pretty quickly, and many of these people aren't allowed to opt out as well.
Yeah.
So clearly there is something to be done there, although, you know, the crisis in the NHS is now getting so vast that it's hard to see that this one...
It needs a whole restructuring.
Exactly.
But who is going to be brave enough to do that only, 18 months before we start talking about a general election?
You know, and we're already hearing from the NHS that they're going to, you know, roll out a COVID-style campaign to warn people not to come to A&E, don't see your doctor unless it's serious.
You can't see your GP, don't see your doctor unless it's serious, don't go to A&E.
Or unless you
What's
want
a
help with your
health service for?
bills, apparently, which is another odd thing that they've suddenly sort of thrown out there. Now your doctor can prescribe you lower bills, which sounds great, but feels very much like, oh, my God, we've already got a postcode lottery and everything else. Can we not have it in our energy
But
bills?
we've also got doctors saying they're going to try and provide food for some of their patients coming, like a food bank.
Well, this is it. We're now seeing the NHS, a massive fan of the NHS and all that they do, but all that they already do is struggling. We cannot keep adding new responsibilities and new expectations on an already massively struggling service. My question around the pensions thing is, why does this rule exist in the first place? My instinct, it's not backed up by any evidence, I have to say, is that there may have been a question around deteriorating skills from doctors as they got older and harder to justify keeping them in the service. So it was felt...
Making way for young blood.
Making way for younger skills, younger blood. So I do think there probably needs to be questions asked around, is simply going towards the older end. I mean, as I get older, I'm more and more aware that my skills are not as sharp as they may once have been.
But here's another question on the wider pension issue. Why do you have a lifetime allowance when everything that you build up in your pension pot, and, you know, if you've got a good pension company, they obviously will boost that. You're going to pay income tax as soon as you start taking that pension out.
That does
so you
seem,
are taxed anyway.
Why it's capped, I don't know. I'm guessing because if it weren't, the payments that come in from the Treasury would be considered exorbitant and unfeasible by the government. So the matched payment from the pensions, there would be the problem, is my guess.
Well, look, while we're talking about finances and massive problems, Emma, take us to the cost of tertiary study. Yeah, what the universities want to charge now for a degree.
I mean, I went back to university to do my master's degree a few years ago, and it was incredible. But what was really interesting to me was the difference it felt between when I did my first degree, when it was free to do, and doing my master's degree 20 years later, when I paid for it. And I was a consumer, not a student. I behaved so differently. And I think that is the what universities aren't thinking about.
Did you get value for money?
I mean, I got a distinction in my journalism.
Oh, well, OK.
So I feel like I did very well. And yes, actually, I had incredible tutors and it was a really great experience. But if you were asking me now to pay, I have not got a desk job based on that degree. I have increased my own skills, my own confidence in what I'm able to do. But I don't feel like I would have got £24,000 a year's worth out of that degree.
And this is just for the tuition.
And that's
this is without the cost of living expenses and the rest of it.
And I just feel like universities need to be much more aware that the more they push people into being consumers rather than students, the more all the other things that they complain about student behaviour in is going to increase. Because actually, why wouldn't a student kick back on their experience when actually they don't feel that they're getting what they are paying vast
But the universities are bleating on about how hard up they are and how difficult it is to provide a service. But I know that there have been recent stories about chancellors paying themselves an absolute fortune.
The people at the top of the university kind of pile are, enormous remuneration because they are businesses now. So they want the salaries of business executives. And, you know, because it is that kind of consumption thing, it's not treated as a public service in the way that it used to be.
And it's international.
And it's international, exactly.
And we're
it's all about
losing all the
attracting
things-
students. So they spend all this money on huge building projects, loads of fancy new buildings, but, you know, there's never that much money to pay the lecturers at the
And
end
we're
of it.
losing the things that make our university system so important and so unique. We're losing so much of that focus on research and, you know, the kind of research that doesn't have a commercial application, we don't think at the moment. It may well do. Lots and lots of research that originally considered didn't have a commercial application is actually at the basis of a great deal of our most successful companies. But we need to get back to that sense of knowledge for its own sake, of really investing in learning and exploring and thinking and being free to explore and learn and think rather than this kind of drill sergeant push it through a 3-year, very, very regimented and come out with a piece of paper that's supposed to be worth an amount of money at the
But
end.
this push that the universities are saying we really need to charge 24 grand to British students for a degree isn't realistic. It's not going to wash, is it?
No, I don't
It's just
think-
going to put kids off going to
What
university.
they'll get is fewer students and no more money.
Well, in fact, I mean, it's not just the Times. I just spotted the Sunday Telegraph. University, I want a refund, why disgruntled students are demanding their money back. So, yeah, all over the papers. Right, let's move on to the Express. Fraser, you spotted more on the cost of living. The Prime Minister saying Brexit freedoms will bring more choice to all. They keep promising it, but... when do we see it?
Hang on, which Prime Minister is this? Boris?
This is Boris.
Right.
Remember him? He's still there. So this is
still in Greece.
Well, yes, exactly. He's still in office officially. So this is the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal that will be coming down the line potentially at the end of the year. So don't get too excited. It's not going to cut your energy bill this year. It's not going to cut your food bill this year. But maybe over the future, you know, free trade usually has this effect of lowering prices. So it's no bad thing. It brings us into a kind of free trade partnership with countries like Japan, Canada, Singapore. It's what, you know, so it's a kind of it's one of these.
And Boris is saying this, and Liz Truss is backing him on this.
Liz Truss is backing it. I mean, Liz Truss, when she was, you know, trade minister, she was involved in the kind of the early stage negotiations of a lot of these things.
Well,
it's one of the...
she accused of cut and paste, wasn't she? That
she was.
The deals were ready to go, and she just sort of took them off.
And taking lots of photos. You know, she liked
Turns
to
up
be
in a
seen
Union
taking
Jack hat and took photos.
exactly
Yeah.
likes being seen around the world. So yeah, I'm not sure how much. You know, personally, she should take any credit for this, but but certainly it's something that she's backing politically. So it will definitely be in place by the time we assume.
We've got time for one more look at the papers. Emma, take us to Princess Diana is suddenly on the front pages again, and this is an alleged cover-up of things that went on leading to her death.
I mean, it's an alleged cover-up by one person who is still milking their connection to Diana, 25 years after her death? I just think...
This is a former bodyguard, Lee Sansom, dubbed Rambo by Lady or Princess Diana.
Yeah, there's more. There's a lot about it in the papers today about the fact that once again we discover that she predicted that one day she would die in a car accident that had been brought about by forces against her. And in this case, this former bodyguard is saying what? That maybe
he believes that there were spies in the tunnel involved. I mean,
so
what happened to
he's
Diana
actually
was
he's
tragic.
talking about the motorbikes, suggesting that the bikes were never found. That is no coincidence. But I mean, all the paparazzi were on bikes, weren't they?
Yeah, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of photographs taken by the paparazzi. I mean, this is one of the most documented things. We don't tend to see them because we have better taste than to look, but they exist in the world. Diana's death was tragic. I am no big fan of some of the excesses of GCHQ, but I think spending 22 years on this particular conspiracy theory is just sad for all of us, and sad for her and her family. And I just think, I think move on.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is all caused by a documentary that's going to come out on Channel 4, and it just seems to me that there's a documentary nearly every year about Princess Diana, isn't there?
And I'm just surprised to see this story in the Star and not the Express. Which
No, it's in the Express as well.
Oh, it's in the Express as well.
Yeah, so they've sort of gone inside with the Express, but it sells newspapers still.
It does. It does.
She still does.
I think she's a very significant cultural figure. You know, people talk about how the Diana funeral changed Britain, made us a more emotional
princess.
country, the people's princess, made us less uptight. Obviously a hugely significant figure, so I'm not surprised that people are still talking about it.
Will you come back in an hour and do some more papers with us?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Otherwise we're going to be in trouble.
We'll have to talk amongst ourselves. Shall we bring you up to date now with what's going on in the rest of the news? Well, Liz Truss says there's too much talk that there's going to be a recession. In an interview with The Sun on Sunday, the Foreign Secretary is insisting that an economic slump is not inevitable, despite warnings from the Bank of England.
Scotland Yard is now being investigated by the police watchdog after it emerged officers had come into contact with a student nurse, Uwami Davis, after she had been reported missing. The Met says they were called to an address in Croydon on July the 6th due to concerns over a woman's welfare, but she told them she didn't want any help and they left. Well, that interaction occurred before Essex police handed the missing person case over to the Met on July the 23rd.
Workers at Britain's busiest port walk out today as part of an 8-day strike in a dispute over pay. Close to 2,000 members of the Unite union working at the port of Felixstowe, well, they're going to be striking, and the port handles nearly half of all container freight entering Britain.
So we've had the falling leaves with a false autumn. Now
That's right.
Potentially deadly combination of high pollen counts and wet weather have created a rare phenomenon known as thunder fever or thunderstorm asthma.
You've probably noticed it yourself. It's blamed for thousands of deaths and allergic attacks. It's moisture brought by storms which shatters pollen, which is normally too large to enter humans' airways, and it shatters them into tinier particles, which is what's probably making you suffer at the moment. And that can travel deep into the lungs and cause real problems for you.
Well, Dr. Veena Babu's joining us now in the studio to tell us more. We always assumed that, the hay fever season was early summer with the grass pollen and tree pollen, but to have this in August, the suffering keeps going on, doesn't it?
It seems like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And even the name, it sounds like it's the theme for a party because it's such a rare phenomenon. So different types of hay fever actually exist, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of it. So there's seasonal, the one you're talking about. There's perennial hay fever, which lasts all year round. There's persistent ones that people may have because of animal or dust mites.
Dust mites, yeah.
Exactly,
yeah.
not just tree and plant pollen. So it's good that we found this out, because if you have hay fever or asthma, it just means let's get prepared. Take your intranasal or antihistamines. Make sure you do those measures, such as either wearing sunglasses, making sure you change your jackets and clothes when you come back in. There are apps now where you can check pollen count before you step out.
I was going to say, obviously a lot of the weather forecasts carry pollen forecasts as well, but only in the summer.
Yeah.
They seem to disappear.
Yeah,
towards the end of
exactly.
the year.
So if you're someone who normally suffers with this, I would advise checking the information before you step out and taking the precautions. 1 in 4 people suffer with asthma in our country, and over 60%...
1 in 4, that's high, isn't it?
Yeah, and over 60% of that asthma is actually triggered by allergens, pollen being one of the common ones. So it isn't something to be ignored. It just means keep your inhalers on hand, use your preventer as the doctors have advised you, keep the reliever at hand, just in case, because we don't want any asthma deaths, because it can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, as a doctor, are you seeing more and more people coming in? So I don't understand it, why I'm reacting so badly. I never have before.
So I have actually seen more of it, and they obviously don't know about this phenomenon, so they may be kind of thinking it's something else. Is this a new allergy? Can I have allergy tests? What's going on? So what we have actually done is try different kinds of antihistamines. If someone normally takes oral, we can give intranasal. If that doesn't help over several weeks, we can give intranasal steroids as another option.
Intranasal is like a spray?
Yeah, through the nose.
I was going to ask you about the antihistamines, which is the main weapon. I mean, the old days, it used to really zonk you out, and that was very difficult if you had to drive or go anywhere. I mean, are they getting better as well in terms of a new type of antihistamine?
Great question. So, we have sedative and non-sedating antihistamines, and they can be bought over the counter. So when you're going to your pharmacy, if you're going to drive or you have work to go to, make sure you take the non-sedating ones like cetirizine, loratadine, and then there are more sedating ones like Piriton or fexofenadine that you can take at night So that helps people.
It's interesting you talk about, I mean, anyone who's suffered from it knows all these names, don't you? Cetirizine and all of those. If one doesn't appear to work for you, is it totally legitimate to just try another?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because some people swear by certain brands and others don't do anything for you.
Yeah, and we're all unique and our body reacts differently to a lot of the chemicals in medication, and if one brand doesn't suit you, try another one. Yeah. If after 2 it's still not there, you want to speak to your doctor.
Where are you on the sort of old wives' remedies of a bit of petroleum jelly around the nostrils to sort of get the pollen to stick to that rather than going up your nose?
So actually, there's evidence to say that does work.
Really?
Yeah, there is. So you put a bit of Vaseline around the nostrils, it
yeah.
traps the pollen.
Yeah.
You may look like you have a bit of a shiny nose.
But it's not going down into your lungs, then?
You're not, it traps a majority of it, so you're not inhaling it into the airways,
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah. Or you could wear a mask. You know, everyone has masks these days.
Yes. And I guess the surgical masks have got enough to actually block out the
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, OK.
That's interesting, then. That suggests that, I mean, we've spent the last year or so wearing a lot of masks. And were we suffering as badly from hay fever last year as we appear to be now?
I think we had bigger worries last year,
well,
so I do think hay fever
But it's interesting. It's another one of those things that's sort of maybe hitting us again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just last question, I mean, is it also a disease of modern living? More and more people seem to be getting asthma because they're reacting to things, that we're becoming more sensitised to all this stuff.
That's a very interesting question. So we're actually seeing a lot more adult onset asthma.
Yeah.
And hay fever, eczema, asthma, they all go hand in hand. So if there is a family history of one or the other, we see that children present with allergic symptoms. We never diagnose asthma in anyone under 5 years of age. So after 5, if symptoms persist, we then go on to maybe considering a diagnosis. Seeing a lot more adults presenting with symptoms. And if you're an adult and you have these symptoms, speak to your doctor. There are specific lung function tests called spirometry that your GP can organise for you, and that is a definitive way.
And you have to learn how to manage it, don't you?
Absolutely. It's like diabetes, high blood pressure. You live with it, but you can have a good quality of life.
Thanks so much. Indeed. Thank you. Enjoy today, whatever the weather brings you. We've been talking actually about the fact that we seem to have been, propelled into an early autumn, because if you look out of your window, there are leaves everywhere. In fact, thank you very much to Aubrey for getting in touch, who says, autumn leaves falling early here anyhow. Lovely to watch, lovely to sit back. I mean, look at that. That is literally a pavement covered in leaves. You wouldn't expect a picture like that until late September, October-ish. We're getting it now because not only are we going into sort of allergic shock, but apparently our trees are.
Well.
Sheila's got in touch from Austria. She said, Austria is hardly mentioned by British television, but it's wonderful living here. Moderate weather. Some summer days a bit warm, but rain usually falls during the night. Local food is the main, so no shortages, and winter snow is cleared. Autumn weather did start this week, and our medical system is the best, with helpful, friendly service and almost no crime. No wonder the young travel here, but return here to settle.
Right.
Oh, no, the young travel away, she says, but they return here to settle.
And maybe no hay fever and pollen, who knows, because of the clean air out there. But
And on the subject of pets...
Yes.
The fact that people bought pets during the lockdown and now can't afford to keep them anymore. Jacqueline said, what did people think would happen after the pandemic about their pets? Our 9-year-old Labrador is insured and the premiums are now £100 a month. That's a lot. However, he is currently undergoing chemotherapy at £1,000 a go, which the insurers are paying for. Insurance should be compulsory. People don't think about third party. If your dog got out and caused an accident, you could lose everything.
Good point, yeah. And last thought on that from Jane. A lot of pets were impulsive buys in lockdown. It caused people to breed more puppies and sell at inflated prices. Now people find because of going back to work and the cost of living crisis, they feel they can no longer keep their pet. I have 3 dogs, but they are my reason for getting up every morning after I lost my husband to COVID in 2020. It's the point you were making, and they really have been very important for
They really have, for our own mental health.
Yeah.
But can you afford to look after them anymore, let alone insure them? My goodness. Well, that's coming up. Do contribute to that one. Don't forget GBViews at gbnews.uk. But in the next hour, we're going to be taking a look at what's inside those containers at the port of Felixstowe after the strike action, which begins today.
And Aiden back with more on last night's boxing. Anthony Joshua, what happened to him and what happened afterwards? Stay with us to find out.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Workers at Britain's biggest container port walk out for the first time since 1989, leading to potential supply chain chaos.
Very good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 21st of August, and you're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Mark this morning.
We're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are the top stories today. Staff at the port of Felixstowe will strike for 8 days, which could lead to the disruption of many food chains. The docks are based in Suffolk, Felixstowe, and handle nearly half of all the container freight entering the country.
In the sport, Anthony Joshua's bid to regain the unified heavyweight title ended in heartbreak. Alexander Usyk retained those belts with a split decision win in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia last night.
We'll take a look at your Sunday weather for the day ahead, and also asking why the weather seems to be resulting in an early autumn, because you just look at this. Leaves all over the ground. This picture you would think might be taken late September or October. It's not, it's mid-August. If you've got a scene like that outside your window, leaves all over the place, what's going on, we'll ask. And please send us a picture, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I mean, that autumn leaf thing is interesting because it's even making the front pages of the Sunday newspapers.
Yeah,
The Observer
page.
there's got a beautiful picture, actually, but it's
There
a
we go.
beautiful autumn picture, not an August-type picture. And apparently our trees are going into
Tottenham
shock.
Marshes, North London, that one.
And
And,
they're going into shock because of the very hot weather and now a drought. And apparently what a tree does in reaction to that is sheds its leaves. And so we're getting a sort of early autumn look. If you've got that sort of scene, send us a picture, do, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And I guess it's going to, what happens in autumn then when it's all gone? We're just going to have bare trees for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Now, let's update you on the other headlines as well, because clearly we've been telling you all about the industrial problems with transport. Now it's the turn of one of Britain's biggest ports, Felixstowe. The dock, remember, handling nearly half of all goods that come into the country, we're told. Workers there, though, beginning 8 days now, strikes starting today.
Yeah, now it's expected that this walkout will impact a number of supply chains around the country as the port grinds to a halt.
Well, it's obviously a big issue for the workers who've not down tools since 1989, we're being told. We're joined now by Paul Davey, who's Head of Corporate Affairs at the port. Mr Davey, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We spoke to the member of Unite yesterday, who indicated they felt justified in what they were doing, despite a 7% pay offer and I think £500, basically saying that the profits that had been made there and the money that had gone to shareholders indicated you could afford maybe a 12.1% pay offer.
Well, the port does make a profit, and it's because we make a profit that we pay very well here. The average workers involved in this dispute are earning about £43,000 per year, so that's about 40% above the national average. So I think we pay very well. We've offered a pay award, which works out with the £500 to be between about 8.1% and 9.6%. more this year for each person at a time when the average pay awards are about 5% and teachers and nurses and public sector workers are lucky to get 2%. We think that's a really good...
Sorry, I'm not sure if we lost you there. I think, yes, we might have just lost you. You think that's a good offer? Isn't it true that some of the workers at Felixstowe have agreed a pay rise, but others haven't? Oh, Paul, I think we've lost you.
I think I'm back again.
Oh, good, you're back again. Yeah, I don't know if you heard my question, but is it right that some workers have accepted a pay deal and others haven't?
Yeah, we put the same deal. We've got two categories. There are two unions here, or two branches of the union. One which look after the staff, so clerical workers, supervisors and so forth. That covers about 500 jobs there. And those people were given a say on the offer we made. They voted 2-1 to accept the offer. Unite, though, have declined. They refused to put the offer we've made to their members, their 1,900 members. They've had no say in this, and now they're having to go on strike. And that's going to cost each of them, you know, the thick end of sort of £900 £900 each in lost wages. So, yeah, the offer we made was worth £3,500 additional earnings this year. The strike that they're having to go into now because Unite refused to put that offer to them is going to cost them the thick end of £1,000 each per person.
And what's it going to cost UK PLC? We've had differing analysis about quite what the impact will be. We assume there's an awful lot of goods and supply chains coming through your port. We've got some pictures here of a huge number of containers stretching as far as the eye can see. If these are not being moved, what happens to the shops and all the industries depending on them?
Well, the containers you can see there now, most of these containers have come from Asia. They're on fairly long supply chains, so it's 8 to 12 weeks from ordering to goods being received. Since the beginning of COVID, supply chains and logistics managers have got used really to dealing with disruption, with lockdowns in China. There's congestion in Europe. There's shortages of HGV drivers. All of these things have meant that supply chains have moved really from what was a sort of just-in-time delivery system to what they call more now a just-in-case delivery system, where they're holding more stock in the system. And we've been talking to our customers, the importers, over the last few weeks. Many of them have removed containers from the port early. So each of these containers, you can see, they'll stay here for sort of, on average, around about 5 days. This year it's been more like a week before they're removed anyway. So a lot of people have removed their containers early to beat the strike. Others will push the deliveries back until after the strike. And then for other goods and some of the stuff that comes in from Europe on shorter sea routes, they've got more options, so they'll probably be routing theirs through other ports. So there's no doubt locally it'll have a big impact on the haulage firms locally. There's about £1.8 million in total in wages that would be lost. So, you know, collectively that's a big impact on our employees. But also that £1.8 million, a lot of that would have been spent in local shops as well. So we'll feel it locally. I think in the local economy, we'll feel it. I think nationally, though, and for consumers, most people have worked around it. They found workarounds. We don't handle an awful lot of critical goods and fast-moving goods here. There's a lot of furniture, there's a lot of clothes, white goods, those sort of materials. They will. Some will slow down, some will speed up, but I don't think it's going to be Armageddon as far as consumers are concerned by any stretch.
Well, thanks very much indeed for joining us and telling us actually what's inside those containers. Fascinating business you're in. Thank you. And let's hope things get moving again as soon as possible. Rob has already got in touch. Hi there, Rob. Says, we all know what's going on with these strikes. It's the Labour Party trying to bring down the government. The unions don't care about people. They're even talking about blocking food imports at a time of shortage.
Let's reflect on another issue that the Sunday papers are looking at, and that's the cost of university tuition fees. Paddy says, I think the uni is a complete waste of time. Unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, kids should do an apprenticeship. A tradesman, I'm not paying huge fees for my training. I think, in fact, many firms actually pay for your training, don't they?
They do. I was an apprentice, and that's how I did journalism. Got paid while I learned.
NCTJ indenture scheme, by any chance?
Totally, yeah.
Put it there. There we go, yeah.
What was your first newspaper?
Surrey Advertiser.
Well, there you are.
Was the Surrey Daily Advertiser when I joined, so it was a daily...
Bridgewater Mercury.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was wonderful. That is a brilliant way to train at a lot of jobs. Obviously, some things need a degree. I question whether journalism needs a degree. I mean, a really good on-site training with a really good, few newspapers, radio stations,
do
whatever.
postgraduate.
Yes, they do. You do your masters. Yeah. One of my sons did a masters in journalism.
I'm a master journalist.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
But, I mean, there are so many jobs where an apprenticeship, I think, is probably even better than going out and doing a degree. And certainly if the universities are thinking of charging 24 grand to a British student at a British university, I think we just got to see industries and various commercial organisations, whatever, coming up with better apprenticeship schemes. And you can earn while you learn. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Should we have one last thought from Cara? I don't know if Aiden's lurking outside. I have no interest in sport, but somehow Aiden makes it interesting. He brings the players to life by knowing about their character as well as their sporting skills and has a delightful sense of humour. Thank you for being my breakfast companions. Boiled egg and buttered toast in bed.
Ooh.
And feel...
That sounds
That's
so
cruel,
good.
isn't it? That is cruel. Thank you for letting us know. Anyway,
but you're absolutely right. Don't tell Aiden we said it.
No.
But, I mean, I don't know anything about boxing at all. But hearing him talk, he knows the characters and all of the background information, makes it interesting, really does.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be speaking to someone in Jeddah a
That's
little
right,
later
about the big fight
aftermath.
last
the
night.
big fight. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines this Sunday morning. And Liz Truss is saying that there's too much talk that there's going to be a recession. In her interview with The Sun on Sunday newspaper, the Foreign Secretary insisting that an economic slump is not inevitable, despite warnings from the Bank of England and others, it has to be said.
Scotland Yard is being investigated by the police watchdog after it emerged that officers did come into contact with the student nurse Owami Davis after she had been reported missing. The Met says they were called to an address in Croydon on July the 6th due to concern over a woman's welfare. But she told them she didn't want help and then they left. The interaction occurred before Essex Police had handed the missing person case over to the Met on July the 23rd.
And another strike. This time, it's barristers. They're voting on plans for an all-out strike next month. It's part of their row with the government over jobs and pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association have been walking out on alternate weeks, but they're now voting to go on an indefinite, uninterrupted strike that would start on the 5th of September. That ballot closing at midnight tonight, with the result expected tomorrow, Monday.
So, on to the big fight. Anthony Joshua's bid to regain the unified heavyweight titles. I'm afraid it ended in heartbreak for him as Alexander, how do you say it? Usyk, where he retained the belts with a split decision win in Jeddah.
Well, Anthony Joshua now suffered back-to-back defeats to Usyk as he could not match the brilliance of the boxing from the Ukrainian on the big night.
At the end of the fight, Joshua threw 2 of Usyk's belts out of the ring and headed to the changing room. And then he came back to shake Usyk's hand and addressed the crowd with a speech, but that speech before the champion could have his say.
Well, the champion herself, who's looking pretty, determined, shall we say there, looking now to face Tyson Fury, who holds the other heavyweight belt. That'll be a unified clash to find the top dog.
Well, he's here, Aiden Magee. Can explain it all for us. But night of drama.
Yes, certainly was.
We were told it would be.
That's right. Well, it was a really good tear-up. It was a really engaging contest. It kept me gripped right from the very beginning, and it went the distance as well, which not everybody predicted. And I think Anthony Joshua can emerge with some credit from that, notwithstanding what happened afterwards. But I want to bring in somebody who promised fireworks. That was the word you used a few moments ago. I want to speak to the former European bantamweight champions and all-round boxing aficionado, Spencer Oliver. Spencer, good morning to you. You did promise us fireworks yesterday, and it didn't disappoint.
No, we certainly didn't. I mean, look, firstly, I'd like to congratulate both guys for putting on an incredible contest. You know, Anthony Joshua knew what he had to do going into that contest to beat Alexander Usyk. Look, last time that they boxed together, Joshua tried to outbox him. It didn't work. He knew that he had to roll the dice this time. He had to take the fight to Alexander Usyk, and that's exactly what he done. I thought he put in a first-class performance. I think his stock rose, actually, even in defeat, because he's got a lot of critics, Anthony Joshua. People are asking, you know, has he still got the desire? Does he still want this at this sort of level? And I think he proved last night that actually, yes, he does. I mean, he gave it everything. Alexander Usyk was absolutely brilliant last night as well. Both guys put it all on the line, and I thought they both delivered. Anthony Joshua, unfortunately, come up short. But what a fight. That's all I can say. I think that both guys got to come out with a lot of credit. And the atmosphere in there was absolutely insane. There was 10,000 seats sold from people that were coming to this fight from around 60 different countries. And the atmosphere was like, it was carnival-like. It was absolutely insane. The fight was insane, and the atmosphere was equally as good.
Spencer, how do you explain AJ's conduct after the fight? I mean, was it a plea for respect, or was it concussion even, or was it an acceptance that maybe this is his last major fight in the ring at elite level?
No, do you know what it was? Look, I went to the press conference, guys. I'm going to explain to you what happened, exactly what happened. Anthony Joshua, straight after the fight, his emotions were running high. Obviously, he'd been defeated, but things just took over him. He got very, very emotional. He left the ring. Then he come back. Then he grabbed the belts. Then he threw the belts. Then he left the game. And he come back again. It was a real bizarre event, actually, afterwards. I was wondering what he was doing. Thankfully, he apologised to Alexander Usyk. He gave him a cuddle. He put the union... he put the flag around him, the Ukrainian flag around him. He was just very, very emotional. Now, Usyk accepted that. He gave a speech to the crowd, and I think he was emotional because he's never had the respect that he deserves. You know, people were putting him down, and I think he was just overwhelmed with, you know, just the way that everything went. I went to the press conference straight afterwards, actually, which Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk both turned up to, and it was very, very sad. Joshua broke down in tears. I think he felt bad about what had happened. And, yeah, he broke down in tears and just said, you know what, I've never had the respect, and I just wanted people, you know, just to... And things overtook me. And I apologise for my actions after the fight. The press conference was very, very sad because you could see what it meant to Anthony Joshua, losing those belts, how hard he trains. I said yesterday, guys, you know, people don't see what he does, you know, that he does not try to take the credit for. The money that he donates to local communities, the kids. He flew people over from Finchley Boxing Club to come and watch this fight. You know, he does all that, and yeah, he does a lot of good work, Anthony Joshua. He doesn't take credit for, and I think he doesn't get a lot of the credit for it. And I think he was just overwhelmed, and emotions run high, and he was sorry. But the press conference, he had his head in his hands and he was crying for the best part of 10 minutes. That's what it meant to him, and it was very, very emotional, and I do feel sorry for him, because he's probably going to take a lot of stick for what happened straight after the fight, and that'll probably take away what a great fight that was. Both guys put on an incredible performance, and I just feel sorry for Anthony Joshua with his actions after the fight. I really do, because he felt sorry that he'd done it.
Just quickly though, Spence, do you think we're going to see Usyk against Fury now?
Yeah, I do. I think that now Tyson Fury has obviously created and carved out his own legacy. But if you want to become one of the best, like Lennox Lewis did when he was in his era, you've got to beat everybody in that era. And Alexander Usyk proved that he's up there. Like, we don't know who's the best of this era now. Tyson Fury's obviously, you know, he's done his thing and had those amazing trilogy with Deontay Wilder. But now Alexander Usyk has beat Anthony Joshua twice, and it remains now, who's the best heavyweight of this era? Is it Usyk? Is it Tyson Fury? Tyson Fury's obviously got enough left in the tank. He was waiting to see who was going to win that. We all wanted Anthony Joshua to win, because we wanted that undisputed title for the two British heavyweights. But Usyk's come out victorious. And I think now for Tyson Fury, I think he'll come out and he's a fighting man, and he'll want to fight the winner of that contest. Alexander Usyk wants that fight, so I'm sure in the next coming days we're going to hear Fury coming out of retirement and wanting that fight with Alexander Usyk. I think it's the fight the fans want and we want as well.
Listen, we're going to have to stop you there, Spencer, but thanks so much for joining us. I know you're busy on the circuit this morning. Thanks for your coverage over the last couple of days in Jeddah as well. We look forward to Anthony Joshua resurrecting his career in the next few months as well, because I do think there are fights out there for him.
Is there a lot of love for him? I mean, is he a popular figure?
I don't think he's quite as popular as he was. I mean, for a while he walked on water, he really did. I mean, I think his opponents were managed in the early years as well. I look back and I look at some of the opponents he faced back in sort of between 2015 and 2017. I'm not sure all of them were at the top level. But then I suppose he was early on in his career. He only turned pro 9 years ago, so it's not going to happen immediately. But he filled that void. After Carl Froch, he did fill that void in terms of, like, this kind of fighter that can draw in a crowd, because not all of them can.
No, well, and this little controversy will add to. I mean,
yeah, I think
surely we know he's an interesting figure.
Well, I mean, look, he's interesting anyway. But I think that when someone shows emotion, it doesn't do anyone any harm. You know, I think it might make people recalibrate and think, you know, actually, I do like Anthony Joshua, but they like the real Anthony Joshua, the guy who goes in the ring and takes hold of a microphone, maybe even chucks a belt out of a ring now and again. They probably prefer that and to the stage-managed one.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't agree with CJ, who's been in touch with us? Maybe Joshua should stick to doing the TV ads.
Well, no, look, I think that's disrespectful. I think that's disrespectful.
Is there a question, though, that they do get sidetracked by all the sort of other issues that go with being a champion?
I don't think. Yeah, it's possible. Of course it is. There are many distractions, not just TV adverts, not just commercial commitments. But last night, I don't think you can level that against Joshua. He left everything in the ring. He left everything in the ring. He tried to win that fight. He was brave. His stance was much better. He looked quicker. Than he had done previously. He'd skimmed down a little bit of weight. I think it looked like it. I mean, he was actually 4 pounds heavier than the last fight, but he looked leaner for some reason. He did everything he could, and he tried to win. He just came up against someone who's better on the night. I mean, maybe if Usyk wins against Tyson Fury, and that's a big if. I mean, I still would place. Well, Tyson Fury is still the favourite for that. There's no doubt about that. Could he win? Could Usyk win that fight? Yes, it's possible. He's a pound-for-pound best in the world, so you can't write him off. But in that kind of context, you're evaluating Joshua having gone up against someone who could yet become the best of his era. It's possible. It's possible. Yeah, undisputed is the word. Yeah, but I still think Fury would beat him.
You'll be back with us a bit later.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Before we love you and leave you right now, do you use cash or do you only use credit cards?
It annoys me at the moment. I've taken to use my phone recently. I got my card cloned a few months ago, so I've taken to using my phone, but it just keeps logging me out all the time, and I get stuck at barriers. I mean, it's funny, I got asked a question of a cash point about 3 months ago. Do you think we should move to a cashless society? It's before I wanted to take out 20 quid to buy some groceries or whatever. I think that, I use cash. There's some places like hairdressers, for example, who only take cash. But generally speaking,
right?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I'm not sure what the taxman makes of that. But
especially for, you know.
But if you use your phone then on something like Apple Pay or wallet on your phone or something, is that deemed to be more secure than now a contactless credit card?
I wouldn't say that necessarily, no.
But you've been stung by being cloned?
Yeah, that was a different thing, though. Somebody cloned my card. So that wasn't to do... That was somebody who literally took my... I mean, yeah, contactless. When I think of it in this context, a contactless card, somebody took a photo of the front of my card and the back of it and was able to use it online.
Right. It happened to me last week going to a local supermarket store.
Yeah.
Contactless. And American Express got in touch with me afterwards and said, did you want really to pay £41,000 to Amazon? I said, no. Wow. And obviously, they think that it had picked up the signal when it goes onto the reader, right, and been cloned with some kind of reader or I mean, you have to say. They say what you should do is actually put your card into the machine and use your PIN and do it manually.
You can actually withdraw cash from cash points using your phone without having to touch your phone onto the unit. Now it's quite sophisticated.
And people talk about the benefits of a cashless society, but does it suit you? Is it really very secure, or is it just terrifying? Well, after you hear stories like that,
I mean,
we're going to be talking about that in a couple of moments.
It's pretty easy, isn't it? I mean, it's just going like that. I think when the argument, sometimes people who are maybe vulnerable or a bit elderly in society, they maybe not be able to adapt to that, but
or to use a card that doesn't involve credit. To use a debit card.
Yeah, I always use a debit card.
That's got a limit on it.
Yeah.
So that even if they did clone it, there's only so much money.
I've never had a credit card. I've never ever. My mum tore one up when it came to the door when I was 16. I've never had one in my life. No. I believe in spending what you.
Well, let's talk about that coming up in the next few minutes. We're going to be talking about a cashless society. Do you think that Aiden's mum actually had it right? Never use a credit
Yes,
card.
mum's always right. Yeah.
Mums are always right. Yeah, we'll be back in a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello again, welcome back. It's very nearly 27 minutes past 7. And you're watching Breakfast. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Mark. Lots of people getting in touch, particularly getting very worked up about the strikes. And John says, those members of the public who currently support the strikes will change their minds when the harsh reality starts to hit them in the pocket. It's the 1970s all over again. The unions want to overthrow democracy.
Yeah, it's echoed by Sandra, who says these strikes are deliberate to bring down a democratically elected government.
Yeah, that's what Kenneth says. These strikes are all about bringing the government down.
More detail from Martin. Good morning. What a disgrace. A dock worker on £860 per week. For the average worker, it's just back to the old times with the hardcore union leaders. They're ruling the members, just dictating. And when the pensioners in the UK get £716 per month, they need to sit down and think what they're earning and what they're turning down.
Actually, it's interesting talking about pensions there as well, because we were talking earlier about the fact that a lot of people bought pets during the pandemic to be their sort of lockdown
companions.
Buddies, yeah, exactly. And a lot of, cats and dogs actually really did keep people going during lockdown. Well, Val in Hull has got in touch. She said, if only vets reduced their fees for appointments and drugs, etc., it would help pet owners in these challenging times and help stop people giving up their pets. I myself would rather go without and feed my cat and attend vets appointments, and I'm on a pension.
Right, we'll keep them coming, and as ever, gbviews at gbnews.uk, and we'll be reflecting your views and your point of view throughout the morning.
But we were talking there just a few minutes ago about whether you use cash, whether you believe in credit cards, whether maybe a contactless card is entirely as secure as you'd rather like it to be. New data from banking trade body UK Finance shows that just a third of all payments now are contactless.
Well, apparently, yes.
Contactless.
And it's going to get even worse. Not just us. By 2031, only 6% of transactions, we're told, will actually be cash. Are we indeed heading towards a cashless society?
Well, personal finance expert Laura Retty joins us now. Very good morning, Laura. Thanks for joining us. On the one hand, it seems brilliant to get rid of all those coins in your pocket. On the other hand, we're learning more and more stories of credit cards being cloned, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem very straightforward. Why do you think there is this decrease in using cash?
I think there are several reasons. One of them, obviously, the pandemic. So it hugely sped up the fact that we're heading towards a cashless society. One of the reasons is because we know that cash actually carries bacteria on it. So there was a study done in 2018 with the London Metropolitan University that they swabbed cash, even the new polyamorous notes, to see what was on it. And there was actually superbugs found on it. So that was one of the reasons that the government said, please don't use any more cash. So I think that's one of the reasons. The second reason is security. So a lot of people feel that having cards is more secure than actually carrying cash around.
Is it discriminating, though, in that many of the more senior members of society don't like using technology and cards, and, on the back of all the high street banks disappearing as well, this is really causing problems for quite a few people that don't like having to get all sorts of PIN numbers and technological devices?
Yes, there's definitely a section of society that are going to struggle if the society was going to go completely cashless, definitely. For example, if you can't afford to buy a smartphone, for example, and be able to, tap on, people using their phones a lot more. And also somebody like a busker, for example, they're not going to be able to, if there was no cash, how would they be able to, get any money and coins? So there is definitely still a lot of work needs to be done with certain sections of society. But the way that it's going and all the data's showing is that we could go cashless within sort of 5 to 10 years potentially, and follow suit for other countries like Norway and Sweden that are already pretty much there.
Now, you see, we were talking about this just a few minutes ago, because obviously if you're going to go cashless, you're going to have to use a card or a mobile phone, for instance. And yet there are stories of these being cloned in various different ways. So what's the safest card to go for in that case?
Unfortunately, any card could be cloned, whether it be debit card, credit card, or even a prepaid card. Now, the difference is, of course, versus cash is that it's a lot more secure. So if you've got £300 in your wallet and it's stolen, that cash is gone, you can't get it back. If, however, you have a debit, credit or prepaid card in your wallet and that's stolen, then the bank has to help you out there, and they can actually trace back to the point where it was stolen, and they will make sure that you get all of that money back if there was any fraudulent activity. So they're all fairly safe because they are all regulated. It's a highly regulated banking system. So there is a lot of protection there for you. I know that the banks, are constantly paying out an awful lot of money when your cards are cloned. So there isn't one that's necessarily safer than the other. However, having said that, if you have a prepaid card where you just put, say, £30 in it, you can't spend any more than £30, then obviously, because you haven't got a lot of money on there, then you're not going to then a lot of money can't be stolen off of it. But these days with technology, as soon as you realise your card's gone, you can freeze the card instantly. So they are quite protected in that case, in that you're quite a lot more in control. You don't have to necessarily even phone the bank these days if you realise it's been lost or stolen. So I think there's a level of protection there that we never had with cash. Unfortunately, though, that they're also, easily cloned, but banks do have to step in and help you.
OK, Laurie, we'll leave it there because at the moment your video has crashed, but we've been hearing you great.
Loud and clear, which is the important thing.
Thanks very much indeed for that.
Thanks, Rick.
It's interesting, you were talking about the fact that it was American Express who rang you and said, do you really want to be spending 41 grand?
On Amazon.
On Amazon, which must have given you almost a heart attack when you heard that. But I wonder at what point they would have rung you and at what point they would have just let it go through.
Well, I mean, I guess...
You shouldn't have such a high limit, should you, really?
Well, no, this was the issue, that it was way beyond the limit, which is why, obviously, they thought, no, this can't be right. And, obviously, it's a crazy amount anyway. And they were very quick out of the mark to say, look, don't worry about it, because we've actually stopped.
They stopped your card?
They stopped, so I had to wait for a new card to come through the post and get the pins sorted and the rest of it. So it's pretty inconvenient. But what worried me was the fact that, you use your touch card so many times in a day, and if you think the technology is there that can actually pick up your card details and then suddenly use it elsewhere, you think of all those times you go through on the tube or trains or at tills.
You're just buying a packet of crisps at a convenience store, you just do that.
£41,000 packet of crisps.
That is very expensive.
Yeah.
And I just wonder as well whether it would be better to get a prepaid, as it were, debit card. That's what I use, so that if you were robbed of any money, you'd only get robbed of the money that's on the card.
I think they do.
Monzo, yeah. But why would you prefer to use an American Express? Do you get some sort of...
I get 1% back on everything I spend.
Yeah, see?
Mind you, there's so many places now that won't accept Amex.
And there are a lot of places that don't like debit cards.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go to a hole in the wall and try and use a debit card and it doesn't like it. So at the moment, this has got to be sorted out, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, to make things more secure for us all.
And what happens to the tooth fairy? That's the other aspect.
And do you know what Laurie was saying there about a busker?
Yeah.
You need cash for a busker. Well, I've seen buskers with card machines. Have you? I have.
More to come. All the Sunday papers for you and what's making the headlines. Stay with us here on Breakfast.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Mark and Anne. Shall we have a quick look through the front pages?
Sunday papers.
Right, on The Observer. Well, it's reporting on the concerns of some senior Tory members. They believe any failure of Liz Truss to address the cost of living crisis will lead to a substantial loss of party members. Interesting. It also shows the amount of leaves that have fallen on the ground already. If you've got a picture that's anywhere near as good as that, do send it in. Autumn is happening early.
On to the Sunday Mirror, which goes with the headline, Wastminster reporting that more than 1,000 tonnes of subsidised food has been discarded from the Palace of Westminster's restaurants and cafes.
The Sunday Telegraph reports that Liz Truss has vowed to halt NHS doctors' exodus as the healthcare crisis continues.
On to the Sunday Express, its front featuring the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's latest assurance, saying that Brexit freedoms will bring more choice to all.
And the front page of the Sunday Times reports that university bosses are arguing for a higher tuition fee for British students amidst financial difficulties. They say that UK students should pay around £24,000 a year for a degree. Currently, of course, the annual tuition fee is £9,250.
That's a big increase, isn't it? Huge.
It's what foreign students
That's the figure
pay.
that the foreign students
Yeah.
pay, so they're trying to get it up to that level.
Well, with us right now, Fraser Myers, who's Deputy Editor of Spite, and Emma Burnell, who's playwright and journalist. And what are we looking at first? Fraser. Oh, fresh wokeism in the Mail.
So people will have heard a million stories about trigger warnings being slapped on classic texts for students, but now even academics are being given their own content warnings. So at Queen Mary University, a list has been circulated of books that people should, lecturers and academics should read in order to stay fresh on equality and race issues. One of the books is the classic To Kill a Mockingbird. But along with this list, the lecturers have been told that some of these issues are sensitive and, could hurt their well-being, and that if they get upset by reading these texts, they should stop and take a moment and take a breather. And it's, So essentially we're having the kind of infantilisation of lecturers as well as students now. If anyone thought that the kind of problems that we've had with free speech on campus was just a problem for students or, young kind of fresh activist types. No, this is really part of
But
the
who is
system
doing
now.
this? Who is saying this?
This is the Human Resources Department in the university.
So it's not the exam boards who
No,
are
it's not
setting
the exam
questions
boards.
on the text.
This is the Human Resources Department essentially telling academics they've got to get more with the programme on race, while also maybe it will be a bit difficult for you to read these texts. Even like To Kill a Mockingbird, which I read as a school child.
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant book,
and it's
book. Worth reading and worth knowing, particularly if you're studying certain subjects at university.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on here?
It strikes me as really counterproductive to actually what they're trying to do. If what you want to do is say these topics are really difficult and hard, and we should be reading about them.
Open your eyes.
Absolutely. And some of the most incredible literature that I've read has led me to... I cried myself to sleep reading the ending of His Dark Materials. I have absolutely learned so much about the experiences of other cultures and people who have lived very, very different lives to me by reading about them, being touched by them, being emotionally moved by them. Now, I will say that if anyone tried to force me to read, say, Charlotte Bronte again, it would be bad for their well-being. There are some classics I can live
but
without.
the point is you did read it once.
I did read it once. It's my choice. I will never, ever
Can I
touch
just
the
ask,
again.
the media dismiss this as crazy wokery. Is somebody trying to undermine our culture here? Because it's actually getting ridiculous, isn't it?
There's not a concerted effort. These things are coming from all different places all the time. It's not as if someone sits in a room and thinks, how can we undermine the university?
It does seem to be a fashion, though.
It's a huge fashion.
But it's a dangerous
It's a fashion that will go out of fashion.
These people think they're doing good, of course.
And I think the problem is they do think they're doing good, but it's like all of the things, the unintended consequences that we, instead of broadening our understanding of each other's lives, we narrow our horizons.
And
that emotional integrity is important.
Yeah, this was always the point of a university education, is that it opened your eyes to other things and broadened your horizons. And University of Sussex, there was a case there where the lecturer ended up actually losing or stepping away from the job as a result of all this. I mean, that's awful, isn't it?
It is awful, and it's not what we should be asking academics to do, behave and be. Those academics are grown-ups. They should be reading difficult texts. They
Push
should
and
be,
challenge your
pushing
students,
and challenging. And students should push and challenge them back. And they should be discussing these issues, not leaving them under the carpet.
That's the thing. It's on the exact issues that people who we might call woke say we should be talking about, say we should be discussing, say we should be focusing on. It's on those issues that actually where the debate is narrowest, where you're told maybe you should be careful about reading that book, even if it is, a progressive book.
That Othello, don't touch that.
Yeah, very dangerous.
These are not dangerous far-right pieces of literature that are being, having trigger warnings slapped on.
They're
usually progressive.
There's a reason they're classics. It's because they're darn good, usually, and certainly worth experiencing.
The quality of the writing and of the message is timeless.
Emma.
Yes.
Take us to the P&O workers. What's happening there?
So the ball has been dropped, basically. There was a great deal of outrage when the P&O Ferry workers were sacked by video message and instantly replaced by agency workers. And then the boss from the company that runs them, a company, by the way, that has a 52% increase in its profits at this time, went to Parliament and said, we totally had a legal obligation to consult the unions, but we decided not to. So he literally admitted breaking the law and nothing is being done about it. And that sets a really, really difficult, dangerous precedent. It is really important that corporations are not seen as above the law and that when they treat their workers in ways that are illegal, that something is done about that.
Yeah, the parent company is Kuwaiti-owned, isn't it, that are involved in, even though you think it's P&O, there's another entity.
Yeah, but they're still, if they're practising in this country, they should be...
Our industrial
their
law.
workers are from this country, they should be responsible.
This is still, though, subject to a civil case, we understand.
Still subject to a civil case, so there is still some court case coming through, so there may be fines, but what there won't be is criminal sanctions, and that's really important.
Yeah.
Fraser, if it gets too cold and we can't afford to heat our homes this winter, because isn't it rumoured that our bills, the cap is going to go to
6,000 now going up.
That is an absolutely terrifying bill to have to think about. Then we can at least go along to our local library.
So local libraries, various kind of, council-owned buildings are going to be turned into heat hubs or warm hubs for people to gather in the daytime. Now, this is some kind of solution, I guess, but it's just a
Are they actually being instructed to do this?
They're coming forward and saying that we should do this, I think, because they are also struggling with their bills.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Surely your local council is going to say we can't afford to heat the library.
But this is one way of them saying, we're struggling with our bills, let's make it useful. Central government, please give us some more money to stay open in the day. I mean, one of the Observer gives an example of a kind of local science centre whose electricity bill has gone up, from £9,000 a year to £50,000 a year.
Crumbs.
We forget that small businesses, local authority run, institutions, swimming pools, things like that. They don't even have the energy cap.
No.
We're talking about we're worrying about the £6,000 rise. Their use of gas is not capped. It's going to go out of control. A lot of businesses are going to go out of business.
Meanwhile, Paul Drum of GLLL, a charitable social enterprise operating libraries in Greenwich, South East London, the borough's libraries already spent £28,000 on new seats and other furniture to prepare for the influx of visitors expected over the winter.
Because people are going to be, they can't stay indoors in the cold. They're going to be flocking to their local library.
I mean, we're not alone in this. I think Germany's got a similar scheme, isn't it, that they're putting into action?
Exactly. Germany kicked this off quite early on because their crisis is arguably going to be even worse than ours.
With the Russian gas.
Yeah, if Russia turns off the gas, then Germany's in a deep
There has to be an upside to it as well. Actually, it's very good for people to get out and
go
to a library and mix with other people, I guess.
Well, it's good to choose to.
Yes.
It's not great to be forced to. I'm not at my best when I'm forced to be social, but when I choose to go out and see people, I'm much better off. And I think that's the problem.
Will they have to relax the shh rule?
Well, it sounds like they'll have to, because even just 3 people sitting there is going to be more noisy than you would normally expect.
Especially if you take your kids.
especially if they're taking children. And I think, libraries these days are not the sort of traditional thing that we think they are. They are hubs of lots of services.
Yeah.
But they build buildings, quite often old buildings, that are going to need to be insulated and well heated in order to help people get through what is going to be a very difficult winter.
Let's move on to the leadership stories, Emma. And apparently Team Truss is getting very upset.
Team Truss are not happy.
What's happened?
Well, first of all, Michael Gove did a classic Michael Gove move and stuck the knife in at the last minute, despite it being far too late for it actually to hurt Liz Truss's chances, which are basically a dead cert of becoming the next Prime Minister, but certainly enough to hurt her image in going forward. At the same time, there was also a very, very not holding back column from Matthew Parris, who's a former Tory MP. They have come out swinging against both of them, in particular Matthew Parris, where they've dug out an old column of his from prior to a Clacton by-election, talking about being very rude about the people of Clacton and the kind of people that that sort of soft Tory, anti-Brexit Tory, were very sneery about prior to the Red Wall being at the heart of Tory strategy. So there's what this indicates to me is that we may get an answer on September the 5th, but we're not going to get unity.
Yeah.
No, in fact, what this leadership election seems to be doing is that it's not very edifying spectacle for anyone at the moment, is it?
Yeah.
And according to the Observer, you were just showing me, it's turning people off.
Yeah.
Politics generally.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a horrible spectacle. And this kind of vicious infighting and briefing against briefing, when actually what the country wants to hear are answers to exactly the things that we've just been talking about. People are going to libraries because they can't heat their homes. I don't think that they care about what Matthew Parris said about Clacton 20 years ago.
Unless they read it in a library,
There's a bit of a narcissism of small differences as well in the campaign. That seems to be why things are so heated, because there isn't actually a huge ideological gulf between Rishi and Liz.
It's like student politics, isn't it?
Exactly, lots of little...
It's all those people who learnt their viciousness in student politics coming to the fore.
And do you sense from the Labour Party as well that Sir Keir Starmer is sort of sitting back and letting this happen now? Sort of warming his hands for,
I think so, but he shouldn't get too ahead of himself. I mean, we should remember...
Or should he? Let's just reflect the front page of the Observer, as you were indicating. Opinion, the latest poll for the Observer, and Labour now enjoying its biggest opinion poll lead in months, 8 points ahead, with Starmer also surging ahead of Truss. So the latest figures, Starmer at 28% is the best PM, Liz Truss dropping to 23%. So perhaps he doesn't have to do much.
Well, I think these are obviously really, really good, encouraging poll figures for Labour. But we have to remind ourselves there's practically no government at the moment. The kind of policies that people are waiting and expecting to hear that, some of the papers suggest are going to come out when Liz becomes PM. People are waiting to hear what's going to happen to their energy price cap, what help they're going to get. That's not happening. So it is an unusual period, and most new prime ministers get a bit of a honeymoon. So we'll see how things shake up when Liz, we assume, takes office.
We shall see.
I don't think we can assume anything yet.
No.
But good news is that Boris Johnson's back in town. There's a big, as you can imagine, holiday pictures of him with his top off, actually, in Greece.
Really want to see
apparently,
this?
no, you don't want to see it. Luckily, it's a small picture. But,
At least someone's having fun.
But he was having fun, but he apparently
Hmm.
flew back into Britain yesterday and is ready to start work tomorrow.
Really?
That's what he said.
Oh, news just in. Yes. Thank you to both. We'll see you a bit later.
Thank you.
Now, first we had that heat, then we had the drought, then the flash flooding and the storms. Now news that many beaches and rivers across the UK no longer safe for swimmers during these summer holidays due to amount, of raw sewage being spilled into the sea. The Environment Agency calling on water companies to sort it out or perhaps even face jail.
Yeah, because these reports are coming in every day now. To find out how this is affecting beachgoers, our reporter Jeff Moody is at a beach in Gosport in Hampshire, where swimmers have actually been urged not to swim in those waters. Hi there, Jeff.
Hello, yes, I'm in Gosport. This is one of the worst areas in the country for sewage spilling straight out into the sea. A lot of people out and about this morning, but not many people are swimming. In fact, I haven't seen anybody swimming. People, there's metal detectors and there's fishermen. And somebody's just gone out on a boat too. But people have been saying to me, look, this is disgusting. This is absolutely outrageous, and it really, really shouldn't happen. This is one of the worst spots here in Gosport, but it's by no means just here. It's right across the southwest of England and in parts of Cumbria too. They say from Hastings westward, the problem is the same. What is the problem? Well, during the last few weeks, the heat wave, we saw the ground baked and hard, non-porous. So when the rains came, the drains got overflowed really, really quickly, and that meant that the water companies felt they had no choice other than to dump sewage into rivers and into the sea. Otherwise, they say, drains would have been overflowing and the sewage would have been coming straight out onto the streets. So they say there's not a lot they could have done about it, but the government says that it aims to reduce these discharges by 70% by 2035, so another 10 odd years to go, and eliminate all incidents of overflows by 2040. 350,000 times this happened last year. 350,000 times raw sewage was sent out into rivers and the sea where people swim. Well, earlier I spoke to Daniel Zeichner. He's the Shadow Minister for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. He says the bosses from the water companies should go to jail.
The problem is that we've had this issue with storm overflows, 400,000 incidents in the last year of sewerage flooding out into our rivers and our beauty spots and our coasts. And this has been a known problem for some time. The government promised to take some action earlier in the year, but frankly, the water companies have proved completely not up to the task. And it's right that people are outraged at the situation that we're finding around our coasts at the moment. They actually called for much, much tougher sanctions. They've already imposed big fines on the water companies. They want to go further, and we support them on that. They've even talked about possibly jailing directors. It's that serious.
So serious, yes, it is. And the people here are saying they're absolutely disgusted by this and want something to be done now. But of course, nothing happens quickly. We may well be in for the rest of the summer, this situation happening again and again.
Well, Jeff, I know you're having trouble hearing us, so we won't ask you any more questions at the moment, but it looks lovely behind you. I don't know how it smells, but it's good to talk. Thanks very much indeed. It's interesting, isn't it, that Southern Water was apparently fined £90 million last year for widespread pollution after pleading guilty to more than 6,000 unpermitted sewage discharges.
Yeah, and the judge in that case also observed that although they'd actually admitted that particular issue, there were countless others where they had basically tried to cover up, if you pardon the phrase, what had been going on. And the Environment Agency launched a really rigorous investigation to find out what was going along the coast of Kent and East Sussex. And that's when they got the evidence to take them to court.
But when a company like Southern Water is fined £90 million, yes, you can argue that they deserve to fine, but where does the money come from?
It's their customers.
Customers, or the fact that they can't then actually spend the money. They should just be forced to actually do something about it. If you live in an area that's affected, please get in touch with us and tell us your story. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
More to come, including the latest strike. Yes, there's another one on the way. Now essential supply chains could be interrupted this week. First, so let's get the weather details for you.
So looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, although there will be some rain showers around. Let's take a look at the detail. After a bright morning, skies will turn increasingly cloudy across the southwest this lunchtime. There'll be some patchy rain around, especially across Cornwall. Feeling humid, though, despite the cloud.
Well, apart from the odd shower, much of southeastern England will be dry again as we move into lunchtime. Some spells of sunshine then breaking out.
Wales, on the other hand, will be rather cloudy and grey with some outbreaks of rain, especially in the south of the country.
And on to the Midlands. The top of the Midlands there, seeing some rain showers throughout the afternoon, but then much of the south of the Midlands dry. Also some spells of sunshine breaking out. Temperatures around 21 Celsius there later.
And the best of the sunshine this lunchtime will be across northern England, although the odd light shower can't be ruled out across the Pennines. It will feel pleasant in the sunshine, with temperatures approaching the 20s.
Winds lighter across Scotland yesterday, and a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers there, especially in the north and the west.
And it'll also be a better day for Northern Ireland, with much of the country dry, with some spells of sunshine, just the odd shower along the north coast.
Into this evening, cloud and rain for the southwest, spreading northeastwards, but much of the north remaining dry, and that's how the weather's going to shape up for the rest of this Sunday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Workers at Britain's biggest container port walk out for the first time since 1989, leading to potential supply chain chaos.
Very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 21st of August, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Mark.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. So here are the top stories this Sunday morning. Staff at the port of Felixstowe will strike for 8 days, which could lead to the disruption of many food chains. The docks, which are based in Suffolk, handle nearly half of all the container freight entering the country, and that strike starts today.
In the sport, Anthony Joshua's bid to regain the unified heavyweight titles ended in heartbreak last night as Alexander Usyk retained those belts with a split decision win in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia.
And we'll take a look at your Sunday weather for the day ahead and also ask why it seems to be like autumn out there. Because if you look at this, leaves all over the ground. That is a picture of autumn, and yet I took that picture on my way home yesterday, 20th of August. It's crazy, isn't it? What's going on? Apparently our trees are going into shock. If it looks like that round you, send us a picture, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Of course, we've also been talking about the fact that, according to the Battersea Dogs and Cats Home and lots of other dogs and cats and pet homes around, or rescue centres around the country, people are giving up their pets because they bought them during lockdown and frankly, they either don't need them anymore or they can't afford to keep them, is probably more the point.
Yeah, food bills and, as many of you said, the vet's bills if anything goes wrong, or even insurance to try and cover yourself for that, astronomic.
If things got really bad in your house, would you be forced to give up your pet? Well, it's amazing how many people are getting in touch and saying, no way. Ben says, this is my best friend Ted. Oh, Ted, gorgeous sort of cockapoo type dog.
Yes.
This is my best friend Ted, who's 7 years old, and no matter how bad things got, I would never rehome him. I would go without food myself to feed him. He is the love of my life.
Paul in Stockholm. Wow.
Morning, Paul.
Yeah, come in Stockholm. I had a beautiful German Shepherd called Kira, and looking very happy there and very fluffy as well.
And he says, due to circumstances beyond my control, I did find myself homeless. The homeless centres wouldn't let us stay, so I lived in a tent in the woods and regularly went to the city for food from charities. They supplied sandwiches, which I fed to my dog so she didn't go hungry. She lived for 14 years, and it was a really sad day to have to say goodbye.
Well, thank you for sharing that because, yes, they are companions for life, best friends. And as many of you have indicated, it's really got you through lockdown, which is why, obviously, many took on the companionship. But clearly now, with times being tight, people can't afford the extra food and, indeed, as we were saying, the vets' bills as well.
Yeah, and according to the rescue centres, they are not being inundated, but they've noticed a very sharp rise in the number of dogs and cats who are having to be brought to them, and the owners saying, I just can't afford to keep them anymore. And that's a shame because we know, as you said, how useful they were, not useful, but how valued they were during lockdown, because sometimes having a dog or cat as a companion really is good for your mental health. But maybe not when there's not enough money to go round. So that's really sad. But thank you for getting in touch, especially with those beautiful photographs.
Now, let's update you with the latest strike to hit us. One of Britain's biggest ports, Felixstowe, the dock handling nearly half of all the goods that come into the UK. Workers now beginning 8 days of strikes from today.
It is expected that this walkout will impact a number of supply chains around the country as the port itself grinds to a halt. And that's obviously a big issue for the workers there, who haven't downed tools since, apparently, 1989.
Well, joining us now, Roger Seifert, who's Professor of Industrial Relations. Roger, thank you for your time. And, of course, this is not in isolation. We've seen what's happening elsewhere with transport in particular. It is very much a summer of discontent this year.
Well, absolutely. As you say, this is one of several disputes. And I think most of us know the background to this, which is simply that inflation is surging very, very rapidly. And at the same time, as we come out of the pandemic, certainly in transport, there's a lot of choke points where workers have unusually strong bargaining powers.
Yes, and I suppose they do judge that at the moment. But nevertheless, we've heard in Felixstowe that some workers have accepted a pay deal and others haven't even put it to their members. So, I mean, you're Professor of Industrial Relations. How do you bang the heads together of employer and employees or unions and desperately try and get some resolution?
Well, as you say, I mean, the strike hasn't just occurred spontaneously. There have been months and months of negotiations. In fact, this dispute went to ACAS, the arbitration service. But essentially, the difficulty for the union is that as inflation increases and as the forecast for inflation increases, the union themselves are under pressure from their members to settle for a higher percentage than they might have done a few months ago. So they're under pressure. The workforce are under pressure from their own families to say, look, we can't take a 5-6% pay cut. And at the same time, the employers are saying, well, it's tough times for us as well. The difficulty in this dispute, and we can't lump them all together, is that the ultimate owner is an overseas multinational with enormous resources. And I think Unite the Union's argument is this is important for the British economy. There's only 2,000 workers, which isn't a huge number. Surely a company with so much money could afford a slightly better pay deal and settle this now.
Yeah, I think Unite, when we spoke to them yesterday, they were asserting that they'd made some 60 million in profits, 90 million, I think, in returns to shareholders and dividends. So they clearly think the money is there to actually make some kind of deal. But I guess the other problem then is that feeds back into inflation.
Well, it doesn't really, because they're only talking about 2,000 workers, and we're only talking about a difference between a 7% offer and probably something like 9% that they'd settle. So the difference between the two parties in terms of actual cash isn't that great, and that doesn't feed into inflation in any meaningful way. We know this current round of inflation is entirely driven by energy costs due to outside factors. So I don't think it's an inflationary demand. What's happening is simply that workers who can are saying, look, compared to shareholders, compared to senior executives, many of whom earn 10 or 20 times more than the average of the workforce, we deserve a pay rise. And coming out of the pandemic's had a huge impact on attitudes. We're saying, look, during the pandemic, we worked, we actually caught COVID, while the senior executives were nowhere to be seen. And they just feel that that's so unfair that coming out the other side of the pandemic, that these executives should be prepared to pay more, particularly at this very dangerous time in the economy with inflation surging and cost of living crisis getting worse.
Yeah.
And remember, if these workers get paid more, they will spend that extra money in the local economy. And so that helps to stave off recession.
But you said that you don't necessarily think that it will feed into inflation. I mean, the Unite official we spoke to yesterday saying that they probably would like to see a 12.1% increase to match the inflation rate at the moment. And, of course, that feeds into the other unions thinking, let's just try and push this as high as we can go.
Yeah, but as I said, in this particular settlement, we're only talking about fewer than 2,000 workers. So their pay rise is not going to trigger a massive increase in prices. And also, what's being said here is that the company can absorb it. In other words, the union position, and I think this is something a lot of people will be sympathetic with, is saying, look, companies make a lot of money. If you push up wages, you don't have to put up prices. You can absorb the wage cost increase by taking slightly less profit, slightly fewer dividends, slightly less increases to senior executives across the board. And therefore, it wouldn't be inflationary at all. And the other side, as we know, of inflation is we're heading for a recession. So you could say if you put money in workers' pockets, they spend that money, and that will stave off a recession, particularly in areas where Felixstowe is based, Suffolk, which is not doing very well generally. So there are arguments and counter-arguments. The most important thing is once the strike starts is to get, as you said, get it stopped. And that will only happen, really, in this case, if the company recalculates the cost of the strike to its reputation and to its profits and is prepared to offer a slightly better deal. I don't see Unite backing down over these 8 days unless there's a better deal on the table.
And would you give that advice as well to other employers who are facing strike action at the moment? I mean, as a professor of industrial relations, what do you make of the climate at the moment where there seem to be so many strikes in a lot of industries where the people at the very top are paid very big wages?
Well, I think that's one of the issues. As I said, the pandemic has altered attitudes where people are saying, why are the people at the top getting enormous salaries who actually didn't help during the pandemic? Well, the people on the shop floor who went to work and caught COVID are suffering. But I think the real issue, as you say, is simply an inflationary question. If people know that their wages are in real terms are falling by 10% and probably by 12%, they simply cannot adjust their working lives, they cannot adjust their family lives. And those who can go on strike will. And that tends to be in transport sector, as we saw at Heathrow, as we saw at Arriva buses, and we're seeing on the trains, and in a few other sectors where companies are doing quite well. So really, each strike has its own merit. So I wouldn't argue that every employer should give in. All we're saying is where the employers are clearly in profits, then those profits should perhaps shrink slightly to pay for non-inflationary pay rises. When we look at the public sector, and we've got nurses balloting, as you know, later in the year over strikes, where we're looking at the public sector, then that's entirely down to government. And we'll have to see what the new Prime Minister does when confronted with nurses saying, look, we worked through the pandemic and now we're having a 5% pay cut.
Indeed, yes, that new Prime Minister will have to deal with that September the 6th, if not earlier. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Professor Seifert. Right, let's bring you up to date with what else is happening in the news this morning. Liz Truss says there's too much talk that there's going to be a recession. In an interview with The Sun on Sunday, the Foreign Secretary is insisting that an economic slump is not inevitable, despite warnings from the Bank of England.
Scotland Yard is being investigated by the police watchdog after it emerged officers had come into contact with the student nurse Awami Davis after she'd been reported missing. The Met says they were called to an address in Croydon on July the 6th due to concerns over a woman's welfare, but she told them she didn't want any help and they left. That interaction occurred before Essex Police then handed the missing person case over to the Met on July the 23rd.
Another strike. Barristers are voting on plans for an all-out strike next month as part of a row with the government over jobs and pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association have been walking out on alternate weeks, but are now voting to go on an indefinite, uninterrupted strike that would start on September the 5th. The ballot closes at midnight, with the result expected tomorrow. And now to the big fight. Happened last night, overnight actually.
And the big reaction afterwards as well.
Yeah, Anthony Joshua's bid to regain the unified heavyweight titles ended in heartbreak as Alexander Usyk, Usyk retained the belts with a split decision win in Jeddah.
Well, he's now suffered, of course, back-to-back defeats to Usyk as he could not match the brilliance of the boxing from the Ukrainian on the big night. And then at the end of the fight, Joshua threw two of Usyk's belts out of the ring, headed to the changing room, coming back in to eventually shake Usyk's hand and addressing the crowd with a bit of a rambling speech.
And then the champion will now look to face Tyson Fury, who holds the other heavyweight belt, in a unified clash. Well, to discuss all this, let's cross now to the other end of the studio, because Aiden Magee has got a very special guest with him.
Yeah, indeed. It was an absorbing clash, wasn't it, last night in Jeddah? The British hope, Anthony Joshua, just falling short against Alexander Usyk. And here to offer a bit of analysis, as you can see, is the boxing coach, Carlos Moreno. Carlos, it wasn't quite a masterclass, was it, by Usyk, but he was far ahead. In your view, what won it for him?
First, I want to say it was a very competitive fight, and obviously Joshua's quite upset, having lost twice now. I feel as though sometimes Joshua doesn't get the credit, having done, achieved what he's achieved. So let's give him the credit first and foremost. That's
what he was talking about at the end, really, wasn't it? When he was saying, look, I didn't really get involved in this until I was 18.
Started quite late.
Yeah. And he was saying, and he was basically offering the comparison or the contrast, rather, that Usyk and Fury, it was in their blood. They did it from the age of 5.
Exactly. So when we look at this fight, first of all, Usyk, credit to him, great fighter. We knew it was going to be a tough fight going into it. I believe that Usyk just edged it, and there's a few things that spring to mind when I think about it. I look at the tactical element, the moment to moment in the fight, so round to round, and then I also look at the strategic kind of over the 12 rounds. What was the game plan? What were you trying to achieve? And I just feel on those two things, Usyk just had a bit more of an edge. Also, it's a bit of a paradox here because we tend to assume that the bigger fighter is going to be the winner is going to be stronger, etc. But I think the size advantage wasn't really an advantage. A bit of a paradox here. It just played against Joshua.
Didn't AJ make that point at the end as well? He said, this is about boxing's about skill, it's about speed of fists, and he doesn't. It's hard for him to generate that when he's the weight he is.
We can stand up and I can show you some stuff.
Me.
We might as well go straight into it.
I didn't bring my gloves. Does that matter?
You don't need gloves. Not with me. I've got total control.
Okay,
it'll be absolutely fine. So if you can get in your boxing stance for me, if you remember the tactics that I showed you, we're just going to put our left foot forward like this. So we have to remember that Usyk is a southpaw.
Where do you want this?
I want this hand right here and this one up here. So try to mimic Joshua a little bit. So we had. Yeah. Joshua done well, first of all. He did improve from last fight. He kept his hands up. there was a lot more head movement. In boxing, you've got three types of defence that I always teach. You've got head movement, you've got parries and blocks with your hands, and you've got your feet. Unfortunately, Usyk was just better at it. You know, Joshua was here, nice and tight, moving his head, but Usyk did it a bit better. Joshua did try to move his feet. Usyk did it better. One of the things that Usyk did that I really liked, he kept his hand here like this, and he was very sneaky with it. Sometimes he would come around the side and do a little poke with the jab.
I noticed that.
You noticed that, right? And sometimes what
the angle, he's finding the angles, wasn't he?
It's an angle thing, and it was all to do with the feet. So as an orthodox fighter, you've got your foot right here, okay? And what I want to do as a southpaw is I want to come around to the outside to avoid your left hand. Right? So as he was coming around, slipping out here, he was tapping him. And those shots, they might not be powerful, but they do get to you eventually.
They generate points, don't they?
Exactly. And what happens after a while, you start worrying about this shot, so eventually you start trying to counter by touching this hand, and then he waits for the shot, he moves his hand out of the way, and he was throwing the big one inside. And then he was moving to his left. One thing that I found Joshua... You know, Joshua he started off really well, but I think he kind of got ahead of himself when he tried to throw the big right uppercuts. You know, I don't know whether that was an intimidation tactic or whether he genuinely thought he was going to land it. But when you've got a southpaw in front of you and he's constantly moving this way, I don't think it's the best tactic to try and throw a big... So if you throw a big swooping uppercut, if I stay right here, bang, gonna get it right on the chin, right?
Mark Longhurst is laughing.
Right, do it again. So
there you go. He likes the technique.
This would be Usyk. Boom. That's what a lot of people wanted to see, right? Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Usyk's very smart, so as soon as he saw the uppercut coming, he just moved out this way.
Can't do the uppercut.
You can't do the uppercut.
No, true.
One thing that Joshua did try to do, so you're Joshua again, so get your hands up and bend your knees, which was very clever in the beginning. He was avoiding the jab and going to the body. You guys would have seen the body shots. He was throwing it straight. So as a southpaw, again, so you're orthodox, I'm a southpaw, meaning that you lead with your left, I lead with my right. So what you're going to do is throw your straight right hand straight to my stomach. As I jab, go on, go for it, go for it. I should have done more sit-ups, I knew I should.
Listen, we're going to have to one final question. Do you think Joshua's got their fights out for him? Out there for him still? Despite last night?
Yeah, of course. You know, you've got
him and Wilder.
You've got even White rematch. You know,
that's true.
You have some, you know, Tyson maybe. I would like to see Usyk Tyson. That would be a great fight. But yeah, I think Joshua shouldn't be too hard on himself. I think he's an inspiration. He's amazing. He's achieved a lot. Having started boxing so late. And credit to him, he did well. You know, Usyk is he just edged it. You know, he's just a little bit better.
Well, listen, thanks very much indeed for joining us, Carlos. Great to hear your input, as always. Good options out there then for Fury. He's proved last night that it's not all over for him. Wilder still possibly on the table, maybe even Fury. Commercially, it would make sense. Back to Anne and Mark now. They won't have to put up with much of my boxing for too much longer. Thankfully for them.
No, that was really, really great.
Round two. That was a masterclass. That was absolutely.
Really
I think Carlos, you should have been in his corner last night. There's a lot explained there, which was. Well, a bit slow. It's all in the timing. Great stuff.
I like it. Really good.
Thanks very much.
Not to understand more and more about why boxing is so good and, you know, all the tactics. We'll come back to you in a minute, but we were talking about the cashless society earlier on, and a lot of people are very worried about the idea of just going over to, you know, paying for everything with cards and maybe your phones. Jim says cash helps people budget, and card is just about control. Systems go down and nobody can buy anything. Companies should be made to accept cash and cards nowadays.
Yeah, while Alison says, I actually find it really pleasant to go back to using cash. A certain coffee shop last week would not take cash, so we cancelled our coffee and moved on.
Yeah, I think we should have the right to both. Leslie says, I think we should keep cash, as it gives too much control to governments and corporate organisations if you just use card. China controls its population with a digital currency, and Canada froze a woman's bank account because she donated money to the lorry drivers' protest.
Yeah, and Robin, I don't know if you are still in China, Robin, but
No, I think it's our Robin.
I see.
Our lovely Robin, is it?
Right.
Tell us.
In China, even though the majority of the population use WeChat Pay or AllPay, which are based on QR codes, those little black and white dots, it's illegal for anyone doing business refusing to take cash. People or companies insisting QR code pay or contactless can only be sentenced to 6 months or up to 6 months if found guilty. This is really helpful in protecting elderly who might not be up to date with the technology.
True. Linda says, I would hate to see a cashless society because I remember the joy of giving pocket money to my children and my grandchildren. Also, who remembers as a child saving your pennies and counting them?
I used to get half a crown. And a half a crown could buy a lot. Used to get, do you remember jamboree bags?
Yes, I do.
They were
Loved
threepence.
them. Yeah.
And then used to get the chews, like the penny blacks and the chew things for about halfpenny each.
Yes.
And then I used to then save up for every couple of weeks an Airfix kit, which you could get as well, in the plastic bags.
But actually, I think it's a very good point because you can't give your grandchildren something on a card, can you?
Yeah, take my Amex.
But, I mean, so the joy of just having, you know, when Granny comes to visit a couple of bob or something.
Well, that's a good question. How much is it now if you've got the grandkids?
Well, it'd be a £1 coin at least.
Is it?
Probably
Not a fiver?
£2 coin.
Might be a fiver, I don't know. Let us know. Inflation.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got much more to come, including some tips on how to cut your cost of living.
Don't give to the grandkids. Yeah.
So looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, although there will be some rain showers around. Let's take a look at the detail. After a bright morning, skies will turn increasingly cloudy across the southwest this lunchtime. There'll be some patchy rain around, especially across Cornwall. Feeling humid, though, despite the cloud.
Well, apart from the odd shower, much of southeastern England will be dry again as we move into lunchtime. Some spells of sunshine then breaking out.
Wales, on the other hand, will be rather cloudy and grey with some outbreaks of rain, especially in the south of the country.
And on to the Midlands. The top of the Midlands there, seeing some rain showers throughout the afternoon, but then much of the south of the Midlands dry. Also some spells of sunshine breaking out. Temperatures around 21 Celsius there later.
And the best of the sunshine this lunchtime will be across northern England, although the odd light shower can't be ruled out across the Pennines. It will feel pleasant in the sunshine, with temperatures approaching the 20s.
Winds lighter across Scotland yesterday, and a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers there, especially in the north and the west.
And it'll also be a better day for Northern Ireland, with much of the country dry with some spells of sunshine, just the odd shower along the north coast.
Into this evening, cloud and rain for the southwest, spreading northeastwards, but much of the north remaining dry, and that's how the weather's going to shape up for the rest of this Sunday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We've just been talking about what's the going rate if your grandkids come round. Do you give them £1, £2, a fiver nowadays? Anyway, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark. Households up and down the country are feeling the pinch of the cost of living crisis. With more money going out every month, many of us are paying a lot more attention to how much the things actually cost that we buy. Lots more to talk about on the programme this morning, so do stay with us, including, of course, all the top stories from your Sunday morning papers.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark, and the time, 8:32.
Precisely. Let's take a look at the front pages of the Sunday papers for you now, starting with The Observer, which reports on the concerns of some senior Tory party members because they believe any failure of Liz Truss to address the cost of living crisis could lead to a substantial loss of party members, let alone a general election maybe in the future.
Well, the Sunday Mirror leads with the headline Wastminster, and that reports that more than 1,000 tonnes of subsidised food has been wasted at the Palace of Westminster, actually thrown away.
Sunday Telegraph reporting, yes, Liz Truss once again has vowed to halt NHS doctor exodus, as it says. The healthcare crisis continuing as many doctors retiring early.
And the Sunday Express front page features Prime Minister Boris Johnson's latest assurance because he says Brexit freedoms will bring more choice to all. He's been on holiday, but apparently back in the country right now. So back at the helm. Time to go through those papers now. Joining us this morning, Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked, and Emma Burnell, playwright and journalist. So thanks very much for coming back.
Good morning again.
And we're starting with you, Fraser, looking at Heathrow Airport.
Yes, so, I mean, we've all seen the kind of images, or maybe people have been caught up in the kind of travel chaos this summer. And the Telegraph has a report from a Heathrow worker saying it's the worst things have ever been. Everyone is incredibly demoralised. There are around 20% staff shortages. There's now, a cap on passenger numbers of 100,000 people. That's going to be extended right into the autumn.
Flights being cancelled.
Flights are being cancelled. People are not getting their baggage. A lot of people are basically, if you take your, luggage in the hold, you're pretty much 50-50 as to whether you're going to actually have it with you on holiday. There's a horrendous kind of story about how, if your flights have been cancelled, it used to be the case that you could get someone to rebook it at Heathrow within a few minutes. Now you're expected to queue up for hours, and then you're just told to call someone up, and you'll be redirected to a call centre in India. And often they will get you a flight probably from Manchester. So everything is kind of falling apart there. Heathrow was once...
Emirates, a big airline at Heathrow, put the blame directly on the chief executive of Heathrow. I mean, even obviously there was a problem with staffing after the pandemic.
Yeah.
They basically said they had not addressed that issue, knowing that obviously people would start travelling again.
Yeah, and everyone seems to have not been caught off guard by the fact that, post-pandemic, this summer, people would want to be on holiday, having not travelled, having not also seen loved ones as well for 2 years. People should have really seen this coming. And unfortunately, the kind of solution that we come up with for this is to have a cap on numbers. It seems to be the same in kind of every area. We say, well, if too many people in seeing their GP, then maybe less people should see their GP.
Yes, but this is interesting because it's Heathrow particularly that is being targeted here, and because there are other airports where things are going smoothly.
That's
so you
true,
have to say, is it Heathrow's fault?
It does seem to be, but Heathrow has always been run right at capacity. And, for years and years, they had managed to do that efficiently. Now things have just completely broken down. Exactly, the smallest problem and everything falls apart. Now we're seeing the result of that, and that also has to do with the fact that, for God knows how many years this third runway has been put off. I think it was first proposed, decades ago. There's records of even before it was a proper airport talking about the third runway back in the 1950s.
This is really indicative of the problem. They are running everything absolutely up to capacity, but then they're also trying to run down staff and hours and squeeze everything. And the staff are really just saying, hang on a second, you can't run us to capacity and then cut our wages.
Yeah, staff are saying that morale is really low.
Really low. And that's not happening to the people at the top who are actually responsible for the decisions that are causing us all to sit around in the waiting rooms.
And it seems it's across the industry, it's not just the airports, because I know that there are airline staff, cabin crew and even pilots who, when they weren't actually flying, went off and started businesses or started doing things and have decided not to go back because they've suddenly realised it's not that great a thing to do.
That's the thing. The staff, they were saying in this article that a lot of wages and hours were being cut and contracts changed during the pandemic, and that was seen as just a fire and rehire under the radar. And, workers were like, well, why would we want to come back to people who are treating us like that when actually what we've got in this country is labour shortages, so they can go and find a better job that treats them better somewhere else.
Yeah. Love to hear from you, actually. Anyone watching at the moment, have you been able to get away on your holiday as you really wanted to? Or are you picking and choosing your holiday as to which airport you can go from at the moment?
Are you have you been in the airline industry? Have you decided to give it up and go and start, I don't know, Market Garden or other businesses? You've had enough of being treated that way.
Yeah, get in touch, GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Times, page 2. Boris Johnson is back from holiday, but it seems he's been quite busy on the quiet.
Yes, this is a very interesting story. Johnson's government has been criticised widely for doing absolutely nothing to solve the immediate crises that we're finding ourselves in. Secretly, what they've also done, apparently, is underwritten quite a lot of investment in Sizewell. Is it B or C?
I think it's B.
We're up to C
lose
now.
track. But which is a decision to invest in nuclear power. Now, I think probably that is the right decision in the long term, but it's quite an extraordinary thing for that to be the one thing that they've done during this summer of crisis, a power plant that will not be online for, probably about a decade. And tying the hands of their successor completely in terms of spending envelopes. All the things that Liz Truss wants to do are dependent, the tax cuts, the £30 billion. This is all dependent on the government not spending additional money.
We were told that those decisions were not being made until there was a new Prime Minister.
It seems extraordinary that this is the one decision that snuck under the radar.
Why? Why would it be snuck?
I find that strange, actually, because if I were Boris, I'd want to be shouting from the rooftops that we're, securing the next generation of power plants.
There had been a question mark over whether we were going to buy off-the-shelf from EDF, which is the French firm. We've got great experience in nuclear plant. But then Rolls-Royce came out with this, nuclear, small pocket-sized nuclear
modular
power
reactor,
station that you could just go and buy and put wherever you wanted.
Oven ready.
Every town its own nuclear reactor. I mean, that sounds
Don't put a nuclear reactor in the oven, Anne. That would be bad.
It would be a bit
People will have seen it.
Turn it up to 180.
There's a kind of viral clip been doing the rounds over the past couple of weeks on Twitter of Nick Clegg, basically saying, we don't want to build nuclear power plants because they won't come online until 2022. And everyone's thinking, Jesus.
No.
I agree with Nick.
Fraser, actually, since we're laughing, let's have a look at this. Bunga parties in the Star, something to do with people who live in bungalows.
So it turns out, according to this study, people who live in bungalows are the worst love cheats. So it's estimated that around 20% of married people who live in bungalows have cheated on their partners.
Why would the bungalow have anything to do with it at all?
I think bungalows are bad taste. Am I allowed to say that?
Perhaps they get found out easier.
Perhaps they get found out.
On the ground floor. There we go.
What surprises me, this is from a survey taken by a website that is specifically for people who are looking to cheat on their married partner. So, who on that website is not cheating on their partner is slightly surprising to me. Like, if you're already on there, that's kind of the goal, isn't it?
So, do they have a sort of, in the small print, only bungalow owners need to apply?
I mean, I'm wondering if there's something about burning off the energy that you're not getting through going upstairs.
They could do that, yeah.
But there are also... Look, OK, here we go again. Please get in touch with us if you live in a bungalow. Defend your bungalow and let's tell us why it would be more likely to make you cheat on your spouse.
We could get all sorts of trouble with people here.
Be very careful how you phrase it, because you've got to be able to read it out on
Lots of wives wondering why their husbands are getting in touch with GBNews.
My parents looked for a bungalow and couldn't find one. I'm a bit glad they didn't now.
Yeah.
Bungalows always are seen in the housing market as being rather special because they, for some reason, I suppose it was the era in which they were built, they have much bigger gardens. In fact, the whole space around them is much, much bigger.
And actually the other thing is that a lot of them built in the 60s, you can make them open plan. You can take down the interior and have a sort of American-type open kitchens.
You defend your bungalow, please.
I suppose by definition,
and your moral outlook.
has to be viable, right, to not have two floors, to not stack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
OK, sewage on sea in The Observer. And, in fact, we've been reporting on that down at Gosport in Portsmouth this morning and across East Sussex as well. It's just terrible, isn't it?
It's disgusting. And what The Observer story is quite extraordinary is that of the 9 water companies, 5 of their bosses sit on other people's committees, are getting paid an absolute fortune to sit on other organisations' remuneration committees and boards. And it's like, guys, you've got a big enough job that you're not doing very well. Please stick to that.
Yeah.
But it also perhaps questions that people think they've got expertise as a result of that to run these other... I mean, there's no competition in a water company. It's not as if you're trying to run a commercial business and therefore you've got great business acumen.
Everybody needs water.
Yeah, and it's just there. So basically, you make a mess of it, which they are.
They're running a monopoly badly.
Yeah,
and then they're going off going, hey, I've got these great skills. Let me go and tell you at £100,000 a time how much you should be paying your low-paid staff. Please give me a break.
Yeah.
Fraser, tell us about what President... I mean, you have to go back a bit to remember that President Trump, when he was president, alleged that he was being bugged by GCHQ.
President Trump, or, Trump's spokespeople, I should say, essentially alleged that Barack Obama, via our security services, was bugging him during the 2016 elections. And the story that's come out now is that this... actually, behind the scenes, created a massive kind of rift within the security services.
This was Theresa May as well.
This was under the Theresa May government, and Theresa May...
And this is Theresa May's memoirs?
Yes.
I didn't know was writing them.
It's a book about the intelligence services that she's contributed to.
Right. OK.
She hasn't actually written memoirs yet.
Not yet, although I'm sure...
I'm sure she's...
she'll be biding her time.
Waiting her moment.
But she is basically saying that these claims did the special relationship between Britain and America absolutely no good at all.
Essentially, because Trump was so unpredictable. essentially. And even behind the scenes, there were fears that even intelligence sharing, which is kind of the bedrock of the special relationship, could possibly break down. Because if you think that the British spy agency is untrustworthy, if Trump thinks that we're untrustworthy.
And now we've got the issue, of course, of Mar-a-Lago being raided.
Yeah. Exactly.
The FBI is looking for documents we think related to defence.
So, if Trump is going to become more paranoid, you can kind of understand why after this kind of Mar-a-Lago raid.
That Mar-a-Lago raid was absolutely amazing, wasn't it?
It's extraordinary.
It is absolutely extraordinary.
And it's hard to know what to make of it because we don't know the reasoning behind it. We don't know what the files were that.
Well, we know that some of them were nuclear secrets.
Yeah,
That's come out since, and it is extraordinary, but not, I think, for the reasons that Trump supporters might claim. It's extraordinary to have a former president who has put himself into this position.
But do you remember, before he left, there was the story about the White House plumbers who were trying to unblock the mains drains in the White House because so many documents had been shoved down the loop, been ripped up, and it blocked all the mains in the White House.
And in what year was that? At the end of
at the end of the presidency,
at the end of his
before
presidency,
he popped off.
I mean, the Trump presidency was extraordinary. And the most extraordinary thing is that he is the absolute front-runner to be running again for the Republicans.
I was going to say, the presidency could happen again.
Liz Cheney's sort of imploded, hasn't she? And
The raid is definitely, more or less, if anything was going to prompt him to run, this FBI raid is probably it.
Yeah. Right. Should we fly the flag for Joan Collins, who used to do British Airways adverts? Do you remember?
She did.
And the other one was with Leonard Rossiter.
Campari.
With a reclining seat.
Absolutely.
She was always on an aeroplane being spilled on.
Yes.
But what's she saying, basically?
Joan Collins is being wonderful at 90. She says that your age is nothing but a number. You're as old as you feel, and she feels 40, which is younger than me. And she looks it. She looks wonderful. She looks fabulous.
This is at south of France where she's got a place, isn't it?
And I grew up watching Dynasty. I was allowed to stay in at break, on a rainy break day, to watch Dynasty. And frankly, I don't always share her personal views, but you could have no better role model as a young girl growing up than Alexis Morel, Carrington Colby Dexter.
Oh, well done.
Wow.
Once you learn that, you never unlearn it.
She didn't get on, did she, with the... I'm thinking of his name now, that played the husband.
Forsyth.
John Forsyth. They did not get on at all well,
They didn't, which probably made their on-screen sparks even sparkier.
Yeah.
But no, she's, Joan Collins is a fantastic role model for the older women.
The amazing thing is that she's still so feisty at 90. She was brilliant during the pandemic. Do you remember she did quite a lot of, podcasting, video casting?
She's there on the
with
front of the Express as well. And without being
house.
too personal, I mean, I don't think she's actually had any work done, or it doesn't look like it, does it? She's just got very good bone structure.
I think she's
as it were.
I can't imagine that anyone gets to 19 that looks that amazing hasn't had something done.
But I tell you what,
I don't care. She looks fabulous. She feels fabulous.
She must be incredibly disciplined and self-disciplined to still look that good at this age, whether she's had work done or not.
She says she feels like she's 40 as well.
That's amazing, which is younger than her younger husband.
No, let's get too personal.
Still thinks it's tremendously rude to ask a woman her age or even discuss it.
It is, really. Yeah. We shouldn't be discussing it. Joan,
well, anyway, yes.
Thank you so much indeed for reviewing our papers today. Have a lovely, happy Sunday. And but don't go to the beach. Because, maybe not. It depends
even though
on
it's
the beach,
August.
Isn't it? Yeah. Because beachgoers right across the UK are being urged not to enter the water due to large amounts of raw sewage being discharged into the sea in various places.
Again.
Yeah, the Environment Agency calling on water companies to sort it out or maybe even face jail.
Yeah, our South West England reporter has been looking at all the beaches along the seashore there. Hampshire this morning, Gosport, swimmers urged don't go in the water.
Yes, and I don't blame them at all. There's a few fishermen that are braving it, and there's a man in a boat. Don't know whether you can see there. So some people are out and about, but this is Gosport in Hampshire, one of the worst affected places. But to be honest, I could have picked any beach from Hastings westward, and then right round Land's End Cornwall and up to Cumbria too. The situation is everywhere. You can't actually see it from here because of the tide, but when the tide comes out, there is a pipe that runs underneath here straight out into the sea, and that's what's been spewing sewage over recent days. Now, the water company, Southern Water, is very keen to point out that 95% of these discharges is in fact rainwater, but it's the other 5% that we're really worried about. As well as being deeply unpleasant, of course, people are at risk of E. coli, salmonella, and even hepatitis A. So how has this happened? Well, basically, we had a long, dry, parched spell, as if we need reminding. The ground became very baked, and the waters, when the rains came, they just couldn't cope with the sewers just couldn't cope with what was happening, and that's why this has happened. Now, earlier I spoke to Daniel Zeichner. Now, he's the Shadow Minister for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. He says that the bosses from the water company should go to jail.
Problem is that we've had this issue with storm overflows, 400,000 incidents in the last year of sewerage flooding out into our rivers and our beauty spots and our coasts. And this has been a known problem for some time. The government promised to take some action earlier in the year, but frankly, the water companies have proved completely not up to the task. And it's right that people are outraged at the situation that we're finding around our coasts at the moment. They actually called for much, much tougher sanctions. They've already imposed big fines on the water companies. They want to go further, and we support them on that. They've even talked about possibly jailing directors. It's that serious.
A lady walking down to the beach to try and go in, walking down to the sea, she's changed her mind and she's gone back again. Very wise. The public mood here, speaking to people this morning, is anger that this could possibly be happening, and disgust, of course, too.
It looks like a lovely beach. As you say, you can't see anything wrong with it at the moment, but if you were a long-distance swimmer, you might not want to go out.
Or even a short-distance swimmer, yeah.
But I just think it is so appalling that our beautiful beaches... Thanks so much, Jeff. And it is brightening up there as well now. Our beautiful... What a lovely stretch of beach that is.
Yeah, and that's the Solent, of course, which you then look across to the Isle of Wight, which is lovely, but not so lovely if you're heading into that water. It's still quite extraordinary. 21st century Britain, and you can't go in the sea because we're discharging raw sewage.
Yeah,
Don't
and it is being put forward that maybe the bosses at the top should actually face jail for this sort of business.
Yeah, well, they're too busy doing other jobs, apparently.
Well,
other
apparently,
papers.
yeah. We've been looking through all of the newspapers of this morning, and there is a lot of, obviously, of the leadership bid going on at the moment. But I have to say, this morning's pictures, this morning's front pages, mostly about Liz Truss, which begs the question, is it all over? Because shouldn't Rishi Sunak be having equal sort of coverage in today's papers? Is it all over for Rishi Sunak? So many in the media seem to be accepting that Liz Truss is going to walk it. Well, let's talk now to a Rishi Sunak supporter who's the MP for Cheltenham, Alex Chalk MP. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Let's just put that question straight to you. I mean, we can't find him in the newspapers this morning. Is it all over for Rishi Sunak?
Forget the newspapers. I'm here on GBNews. That's really what matters. Look, I don't think it's over at all. The really important point is he is out there. He's meeting so many people. So you mentioned that I've been in Cheltenham. He came down to Cheltenham to the racecourse and he gave the most incredible address, and he changes people's minds. And that's what he's going to carry on doing, meeting the members. And, you know, the other thing is this election, the people are going to make these decisions. Yes, they'll read the papers, but these are people who are very kind of politically engaged, and they can see past what's in the papers and they make their decision on the substance. And on the substance, I just think he's you know, incredibly impressive, incredibly persuasive, and he's the right man for the job.
Well, Michael Gove clearly has agreed with you, but in terms of the strategy of the campaign, a lot of people saying, why wasn't Michael Gove encouraged to say this a lot earlier in the campaign and give you some headway?
Well, look, everyone's got to make their own decisions about when they come out. I've been very clear from the outset that I think he's absolutely the right person for the job. But look, the real thing is, regardless of when people come and voice their support, what do they say when they do it? And if you look at those who have supported him, the Michael Goves, William Hague, Danny Finkelstein, Michael Howard, Norman Lamont, you know, people who are titans of the Conservative Party, people who've seen it all and know about these critical judgments. And they see in Rishi somebody who wants to grip the great pressing issue facing our country, inflation, and is not going to try and sugarcoat it. And I think that tells its very, very powerful message. So, so I think one of your earlier commentators mentioned that Michael Gove is a very, very able man. Of course he is. And to have his endorsement whenever it comes is massively significant.
Yeah, I mean, but it all depends how many people haven't already cast their vote, if you see what I mean. We're told that, I don't know how anyone can know this, actually, we're told that something like 60% of Tory party members have already cast their vote. Do you think you could possibly make up what looks like, falling behind at the moment to Liz Truss?
Well, and I respectfully, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, because how do we know how many people have voted? How do we know, by the way, that those people who the polling companies are speaking to are members of the Conservative Party? It's very, very difficult to poll. So, look, yes, I certainly think it can be pulled back if indeed that's the situation in the first place. And the reason for that is because every time I see him speaking to people, people will start, they'll give him a fair hearing and they'll listen intently. And by the end, they're thinking, oh my goodness, this guy is extraordinarily special. I mean, William Hay called him a rare find in British politics. But even more important than that, when I knock on doors, and I do almost every day in Cheltenham, he is the candidate who can reach across. In other words, both candidates are speaking to the party. Rishi Sunak can speak to the country.
Let's sort of go back to basics, if you pardon that phrase from the John Major era. Is it a job worth having to be the Prime Minister? Because we're looking at the front of the Observer. It's got this latest opinion poll, and they're actually putting Liz Truss dropping back down to 23% as a potential Prime Minister, while Keir Starmer, who announced the price cap policy on energy on last Monday, he's increased his score to 31%. So Labour and its leader have got a double poll boost days after announcing that energy policy.
Yeah, well, look, it is absolutely essential that we have the right person doing the job at a time like this, because if those polls were to lead to a Labour government, I genuinely fear for this country, because as you well understand, you people who study this stuff, Labour can't win without going into some sort of arrangement with the SNP, no doubt on the promise of a referendum or whatever, and the Liberal Democrats. And that is a coalition which would genuinely tear our country apart. So yes, of course, this is an incredibly difficult time. But one, we need the right person so that we can win the next general election. But two, we need that person to make these critical judgments over the next 18 months. Because, if we get it wrong, then inflation becomes, it's already a big issue, but it becomes an even bigger issue, and it's this great destroyer, as Margaret Thatcher called it. So we need the right person to make the right decisions for jobs and livelihoods in this country, and the right person to take the fight and to win hearts and minds in the country at the next election. And on both those scores, I think Rishi Sunak's the right person.
Fighting talk there. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. Alex Chalk there, MP for Cheltenham and Rishi Sunak supporter. I think you got that message. More to come as Mark spills water.
Making a mess again.
At least the newspapers were there, and they're useful for something, aren't they? More to come, including we're going to be finding out more about the cost of living and how supply chains of even food could be affected by the latest strike. That's coming up.
After we've cleaned up.
So looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, although there will be some rain showers around. Let's take a look at the detail. After a bright morning, skies will turn increasingly cloudy across the southwest this lunchtime. There'll be some patchy rain around, especially across Cornwall. Feeling humid, though, despite the cloud.
Well, apart from the odd shower, much of southeastern England will be dry again as we move into lunchtime. Some spells of sunshine then breaking out.
Wales, on the other hand, will be rather cloudy and grey with some outbreaks of rain, especially in the south of the country.
And on to the Midlands. The top of the Midlands there, seeing some rain showers throughout the afternoon, but then much of the south of the Midlands dry. Also some spells of sunshine breaking out. Temperatures around 21 Celsius there later.
And the best of the sunshine this lunchtime will be across northern England, although the odd light shower can't be ruled out across the Pennines. It will feel pleasant in the sunshine, with temperatures approaching the 20s.
Winds lighter across Scotland yesterday, and a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers there, especially in the north and the west.
And it'll also be a better day for Northern Ireland, with much of the country dry with some spells of sunshine, just the odd shower along the north coast.
Into this evening, cloud and rain for the southwest, spreading northeastwards, but much of the north remaining dry, and that's how the weather's going to shape up for the rest of this Sunday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Workers at Britain's biggest container port walk out for the first time since 1989, leading to potential supply chain chaos.
Very good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 21st of August, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Mark this morning.
We're live, as we always are, of course, across the whole of the UK, on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. So here are the top stories this Sunday morning. Staff at the port of Felixstowe will strike for 8 days, which could lead to the disruption of many food chains. The docks, which are based in Suffolk, handle nearly half of all the container freight entering this country.
In the sport, Anthony Joshua's bid to regain the unified heavyweight titles ending in heartbreak as Alexander Usyk retained those belts with a split decision win in the fight in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia.
And of course, we'll take a look at your Sunday weather for the day ahead and ask why it seems to be like autumn out there, because look at this. An ordinary street scene yesterday. As I was on my way home, I took a picture of this because I couldn't believe it looks like autumn. The pavements, the grass, covered in brown leaves that have just fallen from the trees. You would think that was something like late September, October, but actually, of course, it's mid-August. What's going on? Our trees are apparently in shock.
So let's update you now on the latest strike action at one of Britain's biggest ports now, Felixstowe, the dock handling nearly half of all goods that come into the UK, with workers there beginning 8 days of strike action starting today.
Well, now it's expected that this walkout will impact a number of supply chains around the country as the port grinds to a halt.
Well, it's obviously a big issue for the workers there. They've not downed tools, we're being told, since 1989, would you believe?
Earlier on, we spoke to Paul Davey, who's head of corporate affairs at the port of Felixstowe. This is what he had to say about it.
The port does make a profit. And it's because we make a profit that we pay very well here. The average workers involved in this dispute are earning about £43,000 per year. So that's about 40% above the national average. So I think we pay very well. We've offered a pay award, which works out with the £500 to between about 8.1% and 9.6% more this year for each person, at a time when the average pay awards are about 5%, and teachers and nurses and public sector workers are lucky to get 2%. We think that's a really good.
Sorry, I'm not sure if we lost you there. I think, yes, we might have just lost you. You think that's a good offer? Isn't it true that some of the workers at Felixstowe have agreed a pay rise, but others haven't? Oh, Paul, I think we've lost you.
I think I'm back again.
Oh, good, you're back again. Yeah, I don't know if you heard my question, but is it right that some workers have accepted a pay deal and others haven't?
Yeah, we put the same deal. We've got two categories. There are two unions here, or two branches of the union. One which look after the staff, so clerical workers, supervisors and so forth. That covers about 500 jobs there. And those people were given a say on the offer we made. They voted 2-1 to accept the offer. Unite, though, have declined. They refused to put the offer we've made to their members, their 1,900 members. They've had no say in this, and now they're having to go on strike. And that's going to cost each of them, you know, the thick end of sort of 900, £900 each in lost wages. So, yeah, the offer we made was worth £3,500 additional earnings this year. The strike that they're having to go into now because Unite refused to put that offer to them is going to cost them the thick end of £1,000 each per person.
And what's it going to cost UK PLC? We've had differing analysis about quite what the impact will be. We assume there's an awful lot of goods and supply chains coming through your port. We've got some pictures here of a huge number of containers stretching as far as the eye can see. If these are not being moved, what happens to the shops and all the industries depending on them?
Well, the containers you can see there now, most of these containers have come from Asia. They're on fairly long supply chains, so it's 8 to 12 weeks from ordering to goods being received. Since the beginning of COVID, supply chains and logistics managers have got used really to dealing with disruption, with lockdowns in China. There's congestion in Europe. There's shortages of HGV drivers. All of these things have meant that supply chains have moved really from what was a sort of just-in-time delivery system to what they call more now a just-in-case delivery system, where they're holding more stock in the system. And we've been talking to our customers, the importers, over the last few weeks. Many of them have removed containers from the port early. So each of these containers, you can see, they'll stay here for sort of, on average, around about 5 days. This year it's been more like a week before they're removed anyway. So a lot of people have removed their containers early to beat the strike. Others will push the deliveries back until after the strike. And then for other goods and some of the stuff that comes in from Europe on shorter sea routes, they've got more options, so they'll probably be routing theirs through other ports. So there's no doubt this will have an impact. It'll have a big impact locally. It'll have a big impact on the haulage firms locally. There's about £1.8 million in total in wages that would be lost. So, you know, collectively, that's a big impact on our employees. But also that £1.8 million, a lot of that would have been spent in local shops as well. So we'll feel it locally. I think in the local economy, we'll feel it. I think nationally, though, and for consumers, most people have worked around it. They found workarounds. We don't handle an awful lot of critical goods and fast-moving goods here. There's a lot of furniture. There's a lot of clothes, white goods, those sort of materials. You know, they will. Some will slow down, some will speed up. But I don't think it's going to be Armageddon as far as consumers are concerned by any stretch.
And that's very interesting because throughout the morning we've been talking about that Felixstowe strike, and although it's going to be 8 days long, will it cause chaos? Every expert we've spoken to this morning said it's not going to be as chaotic as some of the headlines would have you believe.
Yeah, and the other ports like Bristol have actually done a deal.
Yes.
So it's not across the country, it's just
But
Felixstowe at the moment. So.
It's just an unhappy situation when so much of the country seems to be on strike, doesn't it? And particularly as well, if you're told you can't go in the sea because there's going to be sewage in the sea. Pamela says it's taken decades to get our rivers and seas healthy. Now the water companies, a lot of whom are foreign-owned and don't care, are allowed to undo all that work. The water companies should be told to return their shares to the government or face years in prison with their assets seized for dereliction of duty.
Yeah, it's a common theme. Kenneth saying much the same. Definitely time to renationalise the water companies. They're almost all foreign-owned. They're run for profit only. It is such a vital resource. It's time to bring it back into government control.
Stephen Bradford, Morning Steve, says instead of fining water companies, they should be barred from paying a dividend to their shareholders until their targets are achieved. See, that would hit them where it hurts, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and just to underline exactly what this means for people, Howard, and you may want to look away or go like that. Visitors to Saltburn in North Yorkshire used to ask why the sea was pink in one part. It was the toilet paper in the sewage discharge close to the shore.
Oh, that's horrible.
Dear, oh dear.
We've also been talking a lot, I don't know why this came up, but it was in the newspaper review. Apparently, if you live in a bungalow, you're more likely to cheat on your spouse. You're more likely to be a love cheat. Why there would be those two things together, why one would be the cause of the other, we couldn't figure out. But a lot of people living in bungalows have got in touch, thank you. Johnny says, the first homes ever built were bungalows. The necessity for additional floors was a result of land shortage. But it's easier to escape out of the window when husband comes home.
Long-distance viewer and listener, Tony in Adelaide. Blimey. He says, most of our houses in Australia are bungalows. Are we all marriage cheats?
I would hope
Question
not.
mark.
I would hope not.
No.
Martin says, ours is a 5-bedroom bungalow on an acre plot with a swimming pool, a snooker room, a hot tub and a sauna. Bad taste? No, just a fantastic family home.
Right.
That sounds like the perfect.
I was going to say, we're all round there later for a bit of cheating. No.
Christine says it's high time the government stipulated a percentage of bungalows in all new builds because developers don't want to build them. Elderly people wanting to downsize are being pressured to go into retirement apartments with management fees of something like, £4,000 per annum. Mind you, they can just go up according to as and when.
Yeah, because they still own the ground.
So you think you're taking on a rental or something, or even buying with a management fee that can change all the time. Christine says, if you only have a state pension, by the time you've paid council tax, heating and management fees, you've literally got nothing left.
Yeah.
No, I'm a great fan of bungalows. I think they can be lovely.
Yeah, and a lot of people, so the ones that were built in the 60s and even 70s, are sort of retrofitting them and making them open plan and sort of American.
Wonderful.
And a lot of them were quite well built. Pets, the other issue, where we've been reflecting, a lot of people bought pets during lockdown as companions, but now, of course, they're finding it really tough because they haven't got the money to feed them or more particularly take them to the vet because of the cost of pet insurance and medical care. And we've got Jill from Southport saying, my husband and I have 2 large dogs, 1 small dog, 7 cats, and at one time had 16 rabbits. Oh, and 3 grown children. Most of the animals have all come from other people who couldn't or wouldn't keep them. This is not a situation ever invented that would cause us to part with one of our pets. My husband jokes, we got rid of one of the kids first. Sorry, kids.
Yeah, OK.
Gerbil wins.
Yes,
yeah.
And we've also been talking a lot about the cashless society and how much is pocket money nowadays. I mean, it's a long time since my children were little enough for me to worry about pocket money, because we were saying you can't give your grandchildren or children pocket money in a credit card, can you? Although you can, apparently, because Hazel says, I put pocket money every week onto children's debit cards for my grandchildren. It works great. A 9-year-old gets £5. That's £5 a week.
Mind you, I suppose it doesn't go that far nowadays. Yeah.
Per week?
Richard, re-pocket money for grandchildren. When they visit us, they're not expecting and they don't get any.
OK,
right,
well,
OK.
there you go.
Thank you. Have a nice Sunday, won't you? The grandkids are coming round. Let's get you up to date with the headlines, yeah. And we've got more politics for you, with Liz Truss saying there's too much talk that there's going to be a recession in her interview with The Sun on Sunday newspaper. The Foreign Secretary insisting that an economic slump is not inevitable, despite the warnings from the Bank of England and others.
Scotland Yard is being investigated by the police watchdog after it's emerged that officers did come into contact with a student nurse, Awami Davis, after she'd been reported missing. That's after. The Met says they were called to an address in Croydon on July the 6th over concerns about a woman's welfare. But she told them she didn't want help, and so they left. Now, that interaction occurred before Essex Police handed the missing person case over to the Met on July the 23rd.
As we've been hearing, workers at Britain's busiest port walking out today in their 8-day strike in a dispute over pay. Close to 2,000 members of the Unite Union working at the port of Felixstowe will be taking the action. The port handling nearly half of all the UK's container freight.
And barristers are voting on plans for an all-out strike next month as part of a row with the government over jobs and pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association have been walking out on alternate weeks, but are now voting to go on an indefinite, uninterrupted strike that would start on September the 5th. The ballot closes at midnight today, with the result expected tomorrow, Monday.
Yeah, and on that particular issue, cost of living particularly, yet more views coming in from you from Lee. The government has not done enough, will never do enough. In my opinion, we're likely to suffer a lot more before anything gets any better. One thing that has increased tenfold in my area is theft from supermarkets and shops in the town. The Tories, he says, have left this country get out of control. Lee writing there from Cornwall.
Well, let's move on, because Haringey Borough Council has announced the launch of a new low-traffic neighbourhood trial scheme in Bounds Green. Low-traffic neighbourhoods, also known as LTNs, have been installed across the country in recent times, whether that's Manchester, London or Sheffield.
Well, a scheme which some consider a war on motorists, indeed, and that was a phrase used by Rishi Sunak, remember, has caused some controversy. They're even being labelled the new Brexit because they're dividing opinion across the country.
Well, I think we're joined now by Asha Moses, founder of an electric taxi company called Sherbet London. Hi there, Asha. Thanks for joining us. Why are LTNs so controversial? What's the problem with them, as you see it?
Well, LTNs, I think, is the new phrase that's just come up since COVID. If we look at it, LTNs are low-traffic neighbourhoods. Low-traffic neighbourhoods actually cause a lot of congestion on the arterial roads in and around the local areas that people want to go to have a safer, cleaner, better environment. Better environments for that kind of thing is not really for the capital, London, or for cities, any other cities, really. If you really want to have low traffic networks, you should be living outside London and allow Londoners and electric taxi drivers to really move in and around London as fast as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I drove in this morning through Fulham and Putney. It was 20-mile-an-hour limit most of the way, speed cameras every couple of hundred yards. And one reflects that when the traffic actually is slower and it stops starting, you're actually creating more pollution than if the traffic was running freely.
There is no doubt we're creating more pollution. I mean, there's a lot of idling whilst you sit in traffic. And if you think about it, people who live in the low traffic neighbourhoods at 3 o'clock when they go to pick up their children from school for their 1 mile or 2 mile a day journey, they even cause more congestion idling in and around the local arterial routes.
Do you get much feedback from your own passengers about them?
Without doubt, taxi fares go up. Basically, we have to take the longer route. You know, the old myth of taking the longer route seems to be coming alive today, because we have to go round the longer route to get into local areas and to drop off passengers. And it also has an effect with disabled passengers. We can't set down our disabled passengers exactly outside their home, because you've got cameras who would take pictures of your number plates, and drivers are scared to go into these areas now to drop passengers.
What about the other side of this, and that is ULEZ, the ultra-low emission zone? One assumes because you're running an electric taxi service, actually you're giving the thumbs up for that. And clearly, one of the big problems with these city centres has been the nitrogen dioxide coming from a lot of old diesel vehicles.
Correct. So without doubt, I mean, Sherbet, the electric taxi company, have moved way ahead. We only deliver electric taxis for our passengers. But you can see with the amount of Uber cars on the road and other private hire vehicles on the road that actually give out carbon emissions, it seriously is having an effect. Licensed London cab drivers have invested £300 million in electric taxis. They should be allowed to go in to the low traffic neighbourhoods. We should be incentivised to actually use what we call the rat runs, because that's what keeps London and Londoners and their movers and shakers getting through London fast.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, actually. What's it actually like being the driver of an all-electric vehicle? Are there enough charging points for you? Are you looked after? Do you feel loved?
Well, I run an electric taxi fleet, one of the largest electric taxi fleets. My drivers love driving an electric taxi. Yes, we have infrastructure issues with charging. I had one today. I tried to charge twice, and both machines weren't working. But we learned to live with it, and we know London pretty well. We know where to go, and we charge our vehicles and service London in line with the mayor's strategy.
What would you make of road charging? Because clearly a lot of people are a bit suspicious about these plans for driverless cars, for instance, that the technology actually is just there to enable road charging to take place at some stage.
Well, I love the idea of road charging, wireless road charging. Look, we can't fight uphill against technology. Technology is leading the way. Autonomous vehicles will come. Really and truly, London taxis, electric London taxis, will remain part of London's integral infrastructure, especially if we innovate and embrace technology like we're doing today.
Well, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Yes, I must say the electric cars are they're very impressive nowadays. But what's this road charging?
Well, basically the idea is, as more electric vehicles come in and we're not buying fuel at the pump, either diesel or petrol, obviously the government is not getting that fuel duty or VAT. So if we're all charging at home, yes, we've got to pay for electricity, but how does the government then get the money? Do they have a one-off charge for every vehicle, or do they charge you per mile? And they can do that quite easily with autonomous cars, as they say, because you've got the technology in the car telling someone where you are and how far you're going. So basically the cynics say it's all being done so they can actually, you know,
the motorist does feel really punished at the moment, but maybe that's true. Right? Maybe that's the right thing in the 21st century. If we all want a car, we've got to pay for it, I guess.
Now then. Ready? We saw a masterclass a little earlier, and you were going pretty well there.
You said I was too slow.
Well, you had to do it for the cameras, so the cameras could catch up with you. Otherwise, they wouldn't have got it, would they?
True. No, so I need to work on my footwork, I think.
Yeah.
The reason they're doing that is because we've been talking about the big fight last night. How did it go? Did you stay up to watch it? Can you give us the lowdown on what happened, the story?
Yeah, indeed. Well, they entered the ring around about 11 o'clock, a little bit later than billed. The heavyweight title was on the line. That was held by Alexander Usyk, very talented Ukrainian who was fighting. Well, he fought earlier in the year for his country. That was after he fought Joshua last September at Tottenham, when he won quite convincingly on points. And it was the same again last night, really. I mean, Joshua certainly made a better fist of it. He looked leaner. He wasn't lighter. He actually came in 4 pounds heavier.
Yeah, he said, I'm 18 stone. What do you expect?
Yeah, exactly. But he's talking about movement. He's talking about the skill of boxing. How he probably can't, at his size, he can't move in the same way that Usyk does. Usyk is naturally a cruiserweight. He's stepped up. He's finally fought a handful of heavyweight bouts. So he went into it last night. He didn't really have anything to prove, Usyk, but he did want to carry his belt. He was mindful of how an angry Joshua might react to it.
And of course, let's remember the whole of Ukraine watching, because they were able to see it free to air as well.
Yeah. He was able to. He tried to buy the rights from the Saudis to show the fight in his native Ukraine, and the Saudis quite kindly said to him, "No, you can have you can have it for nothing." So anyway, Usyk won over 12 rounds. It was a split decision. I felt, along with most people, that it should have been a unanimous decision. It wasn't. And then afterwards, having clawed back a lot of respect, I think Anthony Joshua for his displayed, he almost like takes leave of his senses and picks up 2 belts. First of all, he left
These
the ring.
are the belts here that we can see.
Yeah, he dropped those out of the ring, having walked out of the ring in the first place. He seems to have taken umbrage to something that Usyk's team had said. He then goes in the ring, back in the ring, makes his way back there, takes hold of the microphone and goes on this kind of expletive rant where he looked to be, for all the world to be, trying to claw back some respect. He was saying, look, Fury and Usyk have been doing this since they're 5 years old. It's in their blood. I've been doing this since I was 18. I was involved in youth offending. You know, I've turned my life around. And so it's kind of, maybe he thought that it was his last chance of this big platform.
So it was a goodbye.
Well,
in some ways,
you could interpret it like that. Some people would say that he was actually unconscious, or he was suffering consciousness issues as a result of the fight. Having said that, he gave quite a lucid press conference afterwards. He did get quite emotional.
But yeah, because he was crying.
Yeah, he was. He
well.
didn't look concussed. I mean, concussed doesn't mean he wasn't concussed in the immediate aftermath of the fight. That press conference would have been a good hour afterwards. But it's very strange behaviour, nonetheless, and something that we're not accustomed to with Anthony Joshua. In fact, a lot of fans actually said they actually liked seeing him like that because it wasn't the stage managed. TV company managed Anthony Joshua that we've known for the last 9
genuine raw
years.
emotion.
Yeah, exactly. And that maybe he just felt that possibly it was his last shot in the limelight. I think that his performance last night proved there are still fights out there for him. I think Deontay Wilder would be a good match-up. I think commercially it will be difficult to resist Tyson Fury as well at some point in the future, depending on what happens with Fury and Usyk, because Tyson Fury has in the last few minutes come out of retirement officially.
Oh,
said that,
really?
Yeah, he has. Yeah, it happens a couple of times a week. But
obviously he was watching you. Over there.
He probably thinks I'm his next bout. Yeah. No, he's come out of retirement, and I think it's basically him saying that the Usyk fight is on. I don't know how quickly that can be made because these things don't happen quickly anymore. It depends on the venue. I mean, I thought the venue was disappointing last night. 10,000 people there. It wasn't exactly a raucous crowd. A bout like that deserved a bigger audience in terms of the people in the arena. It'd be lovely to see it at Wembley, of course, but there are other venues that will be in the mix.
There'll be
for
another
it.
one.
Yeah, they will. I mean, look, Saudi will go for it again. I mean, that's where the money is.
Because they've got the money. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
OK, thanks very much indeed. Do stay with us. Lots more to talk about, including, have we become an infantilised society? Would you be annoyed if somebody turned up to your gig, if you were doing a show, like a comedian show, or even if it's at any theatrical do, or even a church service this morning, if you're going along to one, and there's a particularly noisy child? What do you think? Do you think that parent should take the child out, or should everybody just put up with the crying? We'll be talking about that coming up.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Lou, again, lovely to be back with you. And it's nice to hear that a lot of people, despite the sort of chaos that's being predicted at Heathrow airports and wherever, that some people are managing to get away on really nice holidays and enjoy them. Well, the Prime Minister seems to have enjoyed his holiday in Greece, and he obviously has got back, because apparently he's back in number 10 at the moment. Brown says, I've just returned from Mallorca after a 9-day break with 6 family members, flew Gatwick to Palma and returned without a hitch or without any queues. I can't see why airports need staff, because you do everything yourself, apart from flying the plane.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Helen flying the flag for East Midlands. We only use East Midlands. Brilliant airport, well run and lovely staff.
Yeah, you see, now that's what I was asking, whether if you're choosing a holiday still, would you deliberately choose to go from a particular airport? I know when I went on holiday recently, I really didn't want to go from Gatwick. As it happened, I had to, and I was dreading it. But in fact, it went quite well. But I mean, Gatwick has been particularly bad this summer, as has Manchester. Actually, Grinch says we flew from Manchester Airport with Jet2 in July. 6 a.m. flight to Turkey. Gates opened at 3 a.m. We got in the queue at 2:45. We got through everything, including security, in 40 minutes. It went really smoothly with no problems. But I've heard this about Jet2 time and again. Jet2 seem to have got their act together. They really do.
So they've maybe got different handling agents on the ground. So.
Yeah, but they were brilliant when I went Jet2 from...
Other airlines are available.
Yeah,
but you might not want to fly with them,
Why not call out for the ones that are particularly impressive? We haven't had one bad report over the whole summer from anyone who's flown Jet2.
Another hurrah for Gatwick. This is Trevor from Northern Ireland. We went through Gatwick on 12th of July, swept through from arriving at the terminal to security in 40 minutes. Again, 40 minutes. Brilliant. Then on return, 19th of July, on the hottest day of the year, landed at 6 p.m, through passport, collected luggage, checked into next flight and through security by 6:50 p.m.
That is brilliant. Well done. Wow. Very lucky. Alan says, I don't understand why airlines using Heathrow don't redirect some of their flights to regional airports. Doncaster, for example, is on the East Coast Main Line and the station is close enough for a taxi. I'm pretty sure they could partner with existing airlines at Doncaster on check-in and baggage handling to keep staffing costs low.
They do that in the States a lot, don't they? Use regional hubs, and it seems to work a little better rather than concentrating everything in one big mess somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, Heathrow used to go on about how important it was to be the biggest airport in the UK and everything, but not if you can't run it properly.
Yeah. Anyway, keep them coming, and we'll reflect those views. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, the comedian Matt Ford has sparked a bit of a fiery social media debate after he complained that his Edinburgh Fringe show was derailed by a crying baby. He has warned fans not to bring babies to adult shows in future, with some comedians claiming that it's unfair on both the babies and the performers.
Yeah, well, let's get the views now of stand-up comedian and actor Fran Foley-Winston, who agrees with Matt. Good morning to you, Fran.
Good morning. It's not just... when I found out that this segment was happening, I did put this out to other comedians that I know, quite a few of them, and the absolute majority said it's not right to bring children, but not because they don't like children, but comedy shows in particular... You don't know what's going to happen. If it's an established stand-up that you know, you're bringing them to an arena show, you've seen their DVDs, you know what to expect. But if it's something like an open mic or Edinburgh, you really don't know what's going to happen at all. You don't know what that comic's going to talk about. And even the cleanest comedians are talking about their life experiences. And that tends to be adult experiences. It's relationships and breakups and death and not getting on with colleagues and bosses and all the other messy stuff in the middle. That's just not suitable for children. And a lot of the comedians that I spoke to about this said that they would feel they had to adapt their set if there was a child in the audience, which then would make their set mediocre, which isn't fair as well when they've spent ages writing that material, testing that material, putting it together. And it's just, you can't control the audience either. I've been to Edinburgh and even shows at 9:30, 10 in the morning have not been suitable for children. They're not family friendly.
Yeah, but
unless the show says it's family friendly, you can generally assume that it won't be. Audience members get drunk, audience members heckle. I've seen some horrific heckles, even with the cleanest comedians, that a child should not be subjected to.
Yeah, but can I just say, are we actually talking about children, or are we talking about babies who are literally crying? And as Anne says, just like church, you know, where you should maybe just take them out and give them a pat on the back, that's what really throws you in your comedy show. One thing to be heckled, but to have a screaming baby, you can't really come back at them.
Well, it's the worst form of heckling, really, isn't it? And it's not a suitable environment for a baby anyway. It really, really isn't. And it's very distracting for everybody. It's like mobile phones going off in a theatre and nobody answers it because it's just this noise in the background that everybody focuses on. They're no longer focusing on the show. They're focusing on that. And obviously, the baby is crying for a reason. It's not crying because it doesn't want something. It has some needs. So surely as a parent, you should be attending to those needs. The child just doesn't have the language, obviously, at that age to say what it needs, but it might be changing, feeding, whatever the parents know. So it's actually quite selfish to just leave the child there crying as well, rather than tending to it.
Yes, it's not just bad for the person on stage, it's bad for the rest of the audience, isn't it?
And people have paid their money to see those shows as well. And I have seen some parents arguing in the past about bringing their children to things, whether they were suitable for them or not. But everybody has paid the same money to be there, so they deserve to enjoy the experience. It's not your sole experience, it's an audience's experience. And particularly something like comedy, you feed off the audience. So you need the audience to be engaged with you. I did a lot of Zoom gigs with Tongue and Groove in Manchester during lockdown, and you really do miss that feedback. And if the audience are distracted by a baby or anything, not just a fire alarm, anything, it really does detract from the energy of the show, and it takes away from people's experiences of it.
What would you consider acceptable then to put on a flyer for your show? Not suitable for children or no children, please. Something like that? Would that be suitable?
Not suitable. I mean, I'm not one of these people who wants to ban children everywhere, but there are adult spaces. And the reality is comedy, even early morning comedy, unless it says family friendly, tends to be an adult space. Like I have a joke about Barney the dinosaur, which sounds very family friendly until you learn that it's actually about the fact that the actor who played him originally is now a tantric sex guru. There is nothing family friendly about it, And it's just people. This is the kind of thing people are talking about. I've jokes about domestic violence. I have friends who have medical conditions who discuss them in detail because we do sometimes use comedy as therapy. But they're not things that babies or young children or even up to about 13, 14 sometimes should be listening to, because you're supposed to have the freedom in that space to say these things and the audience know what. And I'm not talking about a Jerry Sadowitz or somebody like that who you know is going to be controversial. This is your ordinary run-of-the-mill comic. But they're drawing on their own.
Yeah, stay with us because we've got Lindsay in the studio with us. Lindsay Carrott, who's a journalist who's got, I think, a 7-month-old daughter. And you were laughing at Fran, but not necessarily on a comedy act. You were sort of finding it, well...
I mean, to me, it's not complicated. You take your baby to a comedy show. If it cries, you take them out and you're respectful to the other people.
So what, you think you'd be discriminated against as a mum with a young baby if you weren't allowed to go and see whatever you wanted to go and see?
I mean, of course. Edinburgh Fringe, which is where Matt Ford was at, it's a family-friendly festival. If an artist doesn't want a child, a baby, a toddler at his comedy gig, it should stipulate on the advert over 18s only, especially if they're performing in a venue that welcomes under 18s.
But there are some mums, particularly mums, who complain that if something says over 18s only or really not suitable for children, they feel they're being discriminated against because they are parents and they have no choice. Either if they want to go along to a gig, they have to take their child with them.
Yeah, and
Well, that's not reasonable, is it?
I mean, I would probably do the same. I'd probably take my baby if there was no other option. You know, childcare these days, it's expensive. I've had a situation previously where my childcare has cancelled on me and I've had to go to a work event and I can't miss my work event, so I've had to take my baby, and then when my husband's finished work, he's had to come and pick her up. Because
but if the baby was crying all the way through, and we've all been to things where the baby doesn't stop crying, it's good manners to remove yourself and the baby, isn't it?
I would agree. I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I've had a situation, where Mia's been crying, like when we went to the Commonwealth Games.
And I think you went to Latitude Festival as well.
Yeah, we took her to Latitude Festival. We saw Russell Howard, we saw Lewis Capaldi, the horn section. She's getting to experience life, and that's what it's all about for children.
What about the point, though, that was being made by Fran, that not all the material, maybe, if the child is slightly older and they ask it, Mummy, what's she talking about with, willies and all that sort of thing,
But it's no worse than they see on TV or that they're going to pick up at school or from other people. And especially with in terms of we're just talking about babies, they don't comprehend the English language till they're about 18 months, 2 years old.
That's your style of parenting, isn't it? If you take them along to something where they're going to ask questions. But it's when they're babies and they're crying and they're causing disturbance to what should be, an enjoyable gig for all.
Yeah. And I would be considerate to the other people around there and take them out. But to me, I've been at theatre shows, there's drunk hen do's, there's drunk stag do's.
Well, yes. I mean, I hope Fran's still with us. I mean, that's the other point, Fran. Surely a crying baby is the least of your worries when you've got the drunken set in the back row really having a go at you and heckling and so on.
Well, I think you expect the drunken set, and they're actually usually part of the comedy. I mean, I've seen Al Murray do fantastic comebacks to the drunken set at his gigs. He's one of the best at dealing with hecklers. You can allow for that because there are going to be drunk people. It's manageable, and also the staff are aware of how to deal with drunk people. They're usually licensed premises. They keep an eye on people. They won't let people in if they're too drunk, that kind of thing. So there's a level, but equally, if you're bringing a child into that space, and I mean, obviously she did say she'd take the baby out, which is the point. You can't leave a baby crying there when somebody's trying to do something. But if you bring a baby, there are the drunk people as well. They can fall on people. They do other things, It's not just that, the language mightn't be suitable. I've seen people fall off stools. I've seen, bag into walls. Also, if the pram is there or if the baby is there and a child is very small, a drunk person isn't looking out for them if they're going to fall on top of you on their way to the bathroom or something. So it's actually another hazard.
OK, I think we're going to come and see one of your shows. It sounds quite exciting. But Fran, thanks for joining us there, and also Lindsay here in the studio. Thank you for your time.
You've got to have a strong stomach to put up with some of that comedy, I guess, or those comedy gigs. You've also got to have a very strong stomach if you want to go swimming in the sea at the moment. We will explore in a couple of moments.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark. Now, we've been talking all morning about the fact that our trees seem to have gone into shock. And if you look out of the window at the moment, it would almost look like autumn because trees have just shed their leaves, streets and grass sections and everything covered in brown leaves. I noticed it on the way home yesterday. I mean, it was really quite something. And you've been sending in pictures too of this premature autumn that seems to be happening at the moment.
Brian's noticed this too, and he sends us this attached picture of our front garden here in Charlton mackerel in Somerset this morning.
Yeah, you look, I mean, that's leaves. We can't quite see it because of the strap going over the, there we are. Look, magic goes out. But you can see the grass is absolutely covered. Yeah, you'd think that shot was taken in autumn, but here we are in mid-August.
Well, in fact, he says, I cleared the lawn yesterday, but just as many today. Might take them out today to relieve the stress. Oh, don't take trees out. Leave them there.
They need to be de-stressed, though, don't they? We've got something else
Speak
from
to them
James
nicely.
as well, who said, oh, look at that. Now, you see, that's autumn, isn't it? He said, I took this 3 weeks ago, as I was confused, it being July and leaves all over the place.
And more reaction, too, on the pet story, that lots of people say that they can't afford to keep their pets anymore. Aubrey, this is our dear Tutu. Despite the high cost of living, too cute to be gotten rid of.
Far too cute. I mean, the story basically is that people are having to give up some of the pets they particularly bought during lockdown because they can't afford to feed them anymore. That's according to the Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, so nobody's making it up. Bob says these are our 2 rescue greyhounds. They're with us for keeps, and we would do without anything ourselves to give them a long and happy life with us.
Amanda, meanwhile, saying, I would never, ever give away our pets. How could we look at these? Quite right. That is cute to both of them. I haven't got their names, unfortunately.
Well, I think that might be Russell.
Oh, is that Russell and Saxby?
And Saxby.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello, Russell and Saxby. Hope you're enjoying GB News this morning as well.
Well, and they say I think if you have a pet, you need to think of them as a long-term commitment. And I would go without and cut back myself if things ever got tough. That's not me saying that. That's our lovely GB viewer. Thank you very much for getting in touch there. It's always lovely to see those sort of pictures, isn't it?
Well, as we're seeing with those pictures, first we had the heat, then the drought, then the flash flooding, then the storms, and now, yes, it's another environmental issue with news that beaches and rivers across the UK are no longer safe for swimmers due to the amount of raw sewage being pumped into the sea. The Environment Agency calling on water companies now to sort it out or perhaps even face jail.
Perhaps they should. Throughout the morning, we've been checking in with our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who's live from a beach, I think, in Gosport, in Hampshire, where swimmers are actually being urged not to go in the water. Isn't that right, Jeff?
They are indeed being urged not to go in the water, but that hasn't stopped them. They're British. Just after I last spoke to you an hour ago, there was a deluge of swimmers that came down to the edge. They went in the water. Some of them are still in the water now, believe it or not. But this is one of the worst spots, Gosport, one of the worst spots in the country. But to be honest with you, I could have picked any beach from Hastings right the way down to Land's End. It affects most of the south coast of England. You can't see this at the moment, but underneath my feet, there is a pipe that leads out into the Solent. The tide's too high to see it right now, but that has been spewing raw sewage out into the open. Now, the water companies are very keen to point out that 95% of these discharges are in fact rainwater. But it's the 5% that we're concerned about, and that's what can lead to the health problems. Lots of health problems, E. coli, salmonella and hepatitis A too. Why has this happened in 21st century Britain? Well, it's all to do with the fact that we had a heat wave, the ground got very hard, very heavy, not so porous, and then when the rains came, our drains, our sewage, a lot of it Victorian, just couldn't cope. And if they hadn't done that, there would have been raw sewage spilling down our streets. Well, the water companies, of course, have come under an awful lot of pressure because of this. People saying, well, look, you know, they're awarding themselves these huge pay packets, and yet they've got raw sewage flooding into our oceans because they haven't updated the Victorian sewer systems. There are leaks everywhere as well. They're just not doing the job as well as they should do. I've been speaking earlier on to Daniel Zuchner. Now, he is the Shadow Minister for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Now, he said to me that the bosses from the water companies really should go to jail.
The problem is that we've had this issue with storm overflows, 400,000 incidents in the last year of sewerage flooding out into our rivers and our beauty spots and our coasts. And this has been a known problem for some time. The government promised to take some action earlier in the year, but frankly, the water companies have proved completely not up to the task. And it's right that people are outraged at the situation that we're finding around our coasts at the moment. They actually called for much, much tougher sanctions. They've already imposed big fines on the water companies. They want to go further, and we support them on that. They've even talked about possibly jailing directors. It's that...
Well, serious it is indeed. A few days ago, the water companies actually said, use your judgment as to whether to go into the sea or not. And that's enraged certain people as well that are saying, you know, we pay our water bills, we shouldn't have to use our judgment. The seas should be safe for us. People here have been using their judgment and they've decided to go in the water today.
Yeah, you take your life in your hands at the moment. That is terrible, isn't it? On a British beach, especially when the weather's been so warm.
Yeah.
Take your life in your hands when you go swimming. Thanks very much, Jeff. Thank you. It's brightening up there anyway, at least. You can walk along the beach, if that's all.
Yeah, but be careful where you're walking.
Aidan and Stephanie have joined us, so you can tell we're sort of feeling a bit Sunday-ish already.
Family time, isn't it?
Yeah. Aidan's had a lot of airtime this morning because he's been boxing, talking about the big fight last night. But Stephanie, there is a big wedding that's probably still going on as we speak.
We speak, indeed. So J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez, and Ben Affleck have said I do for a second time, but this time in front of friends and family. And obviously I was up beyond the boxing. I did watch the boxing. I loved it. But then I was looking out for the pictures from the wedding, and you see them on the steps, and J-Lo's wearing a nice Ralph Lauren wedding dress, and the train was about 20 feet.
It was a real royal wedding dress, wasn't it?
And they went opposite tradition, and they made all the guests wear white. So I'm sure the pictures are going to be looking fantastic.
And this was in Georgia.
Georgia.
Was it $8.9 million?
$6 million in his mansion there, and it just looks incredible. They've really dressed it up. And
It's a big mansion that's built in the old style, plantation style, with an enormous staircase at the back leading down, and they've made it even longer, and it's all like a white.
It looks very romantic.
Everything was very, very white. I've seen a few pictures online, but the Mail on Sunday, or at least the Mail, seem to have bought up the pictures exclusive.
They probably spent a lot of money for
But we haven't been able to get a late enough edition of the newspaper that's got it in at the moment.
But it is online for people to see.
It is online, yeah.
And I would like to say, it looks like Ben and Jennifer have had their fairy tale ending to their
Do they have
romance.
their amalgam name, you know, like Brangelina or whatever? Do they have one of those?
Benifer.
Of course it is,
They're really, honestly.
Surrounded by A-list celebrities. Do we know who else was there?
Well, I know Matt Damon was there because him and Affleck are quite close friends.
Yes, of course they
They're
were,
like best friends.
Yeah,
but he's the only name I've heard that's...
Casey Affleck was last seen in Los Angeles a few hours ago.
He snubbed it.
Yeah, but they're very close, and I'm surprised
Well,
he
people are
snubbed
saying
it.
that he made a bit of a cryptic statement online about not attending the wedding, but who knows, he might come for the barbecue because today's the barbecue day. So he may
Honestly,
turn up.
this place is so big, it's like an island in the middle. So it's surrounded almost by water. And there's the main house, big house, which is obviously where they've done some of it. But there's another house which is equally big called the Oyster House, which is where they're going to do the reception. And then there are lots of other outbuildings where various guests will be able to be put up, and they'll be allowed to go hunting, alligators, golf.
Sounds like my kind of wedding.
And the women obviously will be getting dressed up. Apparently, a lot of the celebrity lady guests have turned up with their own entourage of makeup people, photographers.
Oh, wow, this is full-on glamour.
Honestly, it is full-on.
Probably not uncommon, though.
And trolley buses from Savannah to ferry the guests in and out before the firework display from the lake. So just a small affair, then, really.
I've been to Savannah before, and it is such a lovely place, very charming. Very old America.
This is the fourth marriage for her, though?
For J-Lo, so on third time lucky. I think it's going to work out for both of them, actually, because I feel like they've come back together from the past after breaking up before, and so I think that they're much older, much wiser. They've been through failed relationships before. Ben has made it clear he doesn't want to be in the limelight as much, and he's just letting J-Lo run.
How long do the marriages tend to last?
Give it about 3 to 4 years. But I think they're for keeps.
I hope so. They certainly know each other by now.
Yeah,
don't
they do. They must know it's love.
Is it fair to say that you're talking about Matt Damon? He got him back on the straight and narrow as well.
He did, yeah, because Ben Affleck's had a lot of alcohol problems in the past, a lot of addictions, which he's been quite honest about over the past few years. So I think Jennifer Lopez and Matt Damon have been key to his recovery.
Getting him back on the straight and narrow.
And long may he stay on it.
Yeah. OK, well, you mentioned Brangelina. That's the other duo. And this is I mean, this is going back quite a few years now.
Was this 2016?
Yeah, this was the flight on the private aircraft.
So this was really the break of their marriage. So this infamous flight, private jet flight they took, where they had this really big argument. It got quite physical, quite verbal, and their kids were there. And they had, obviously, it was reported to the police, but up until now, nothing's came out. But in April, Angelina Jolie filed for a Freedom of Information request for it to come out, because she wanted to know why Brad wasn't charged for assault on that journey. And so a lot of things have come out, including pictures of her bruises on her elbow. Apparently, he must have called one of his children a slur as well. So it's been coming out, and it's been quite distasteful, if I'm honest, to be honest.
And again, he's got problems with alcohol.
Each other, really, because it's been a fight over custody of the youngest children.
6 years, and it's still going on.
But in fact, it's gone on such a long time now. Most of the children are over 18 and can make up their own minds about who they want to see.
And they've moved on as well. But, you know, Brad's been quite vocal. He's just been like, he just feels like Angelina's bringing this into the media just to get at him. He's been quite private about all of this, where I feel like Angelina feels like justice hasn't been served in this situation.
What damage could it do to his standing in his career then if this comes up?
I don't think it will do much damage, because we're talking about a situation which happened 6 years ago. It's quite a personal matter, a family matter. The FBI themselves didn't charge him with assault, so it's just like Angelina's just trying to break things up.
And again, you know, we were talking about issues with alcohol abuse. I mean, again, he's been quite upfront that he's had problems which he's addressed. And indications perhaps that alcohol was involved in this.
Yeah, it was quite an alcohol-fueled rage with this situation. And again, you know, like most of these celebrities, they are fighting addictions, you know, beyond all the glamour.
It's a tough life being that rich, isn't it? Aidan, we've been talking an awful lot about the big fight.
Yes.
But apart from that, what else is going on in the sporting world
Well,
today?
it's a big weekend of football as well. I can't remember any time I've been on this show before where I've not mentioned football all day, and it's got to this point. But yeah, you probably quite enjoyed it. But no, seriously, Arsenal went top yesterday with a 3-0 win. Now Arsenal are the perennial bottlers. You know, they're the ones who they look as if they're going to do well. They promise a lot and don't deliver. Well, last season they started badly. They finished badly. That was enough to keep them out of the Champions League. Reckon they lost out to Tottenham. But yesterday they went to Bournemouth, won 3-0. They've played 3, won 3. It's all looking good, actually. You'll probably like this, Steph, because they're involved in this All or Nothing documentary. It's a series. I think it's about 10 parts.
I've heard about
It's a fly-on-the-wall thing. And so Tottenham have done one. I think Crystal Palace did one. Man City did one a few years ago as well.
It just follows them.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable for the manager because, you know, he can't really be himself, but he's actually come out with some quite interesting techniques that are kind of...
So you can't adopt the hairdryer in the dressing room as Fergie used to?
You can. No, he actually... Mikel Arteta does do that. Now, the thing is, it'd be interesting how... All this has been filmed last season. It bears no relevance on today. And I wonder how people were viewing that particular documentary had they been losing games at the moment. They say, oh, well, you know, if he manages like that, then there's no wonder they're losing. But they're winning at the moment at the top of the league.
We mentioned Fergie. I mean, Manchester United, that would be a documentary. Find out what's going on behind the scenes there.
It might be a while before we see that. But they're playing Liverpool tomorrow, so that's the biggest game of the season so far. We don't get too many top 6 clashes in the early part of the season, as we mentioned last week. But in fact, it's not even top 6 tomorrow because Liverpool and all United are yet to win. But there's I don't even remember, but 2 years ago, fans broke into this to the stadium at Old Trafford before this fixture, and it eventually never got played. 200 fans broke in to protest against the Glazers. Those protests are back on the agenda tomorrow. Jurgen Klopp, the Liverpool coach, has said this time, if the game is stopped or it doesn't go ahead because of the protesters, it has to be fair. We have to get the points. And so it's aroused a little feeling beforehand, but he's probably got a point, I would suggest.
Why are these protests back on the agenda?
Because the Glazers have,
rubbish.
Well, United have just not been playing well. In the first place, you look when you've lost the first 2 games of the season. You had a wretched season last year as well. Your changing managers is not working. In the first place, you look is the ownership of the club, the stewardship of the club, because they are the ones who appoint the managers. The managers are the ones who sign the players. Sometimes the owners sign the players, and I'm not saying the Glazers aren't involved in that as well. The CEO situation doesn't look good. They seem to be a model for everybody off the pitch, Man United, in terms of their commercial viability.
Yes,
but on the pitch at the moment, you wouldn't want to be like Man United. In fact, they lost 4-1 to Brentford last week and lost at home to Brighton the week before, so they're not in a good shape.
Right, we are all talked out. Thank you so much to Stephanie and Aidan. It's been very amusing watching you do your bout today. But thank you so much for joining us as well. That's it from us for the moment. We will be back. The weekend team will be back Friday morning, bright and early, 6 o'clock. Right now, let's catch up with the weather. So looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many, although there will be some rain showers around. Let's take a look at the detail. After a bright morning, skies will turn increasingly cloudy across the southwest this lunchtime. There'll be some patchy rain around, especially across Cornwall. Feeling humid, though, despite the cloud.
Well, apart from the odd shower, much of southeastern England will be dry again as we move into lunchtime. Some spells of sunshine then breaking out.
Wales, on the other hand, will be rather cloudy and grey with some outbreaks of rain, especially in the south of the country.
And on to the Midlands. The top of the Midlands there, seeing some rain showers throughout the afternoon, but then much of the south of the Midlands dry. Also some spells of sunshine breaking out. Temperatures around 21 Celsius there later.
And the best of the sunshine this lunchtime will be across northern England, although the odd light shower can't be ruled out across the Pennines. It will feel pleasant in the sunshine, with temperatures approaching the 20s.
Winds lighter across Scotland yesterday and a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers there, especially in the north and the west.
And it'll also be a better day for Northern Ireland, with much of the country dry with some spells of sunshine, just the odd shower along the north coast.
Into this evening, cloud and rain for the southwest, spreading northeastwards, but much of the north remaining dry, and that's how the weather's going to shape up for the rest of this Sunday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking